Hello, welcome. I'm here. I was running late. I had to get my cup of tea. So I hope everyone is well tonight. If you're new here, my name is Dana, and these are live streams that we do every Wednesday night. They run, we don't really know how long they run, they vary in length every single week. So I don't know, 2-ish hours. I think I'm going to try to move to making them a little bit shorter. I don't know. I'm going to be playing around with some things, I think, this year. So like time, I don't know. There's a lot of things I'd like to do. So anyways, but yes, we normally do these every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They go for about 2-ish hours. And if you have a question for the live stream, and if it's just my 2 cents, and other people chime in as well in the chat if you want to join in on that. So my email is deardana@thriveafterabuse.com, and I will see what I can do to answer your question. So let's see who is on tonight. Oh, good. Lots of people are here tonight. Nightingale, Athena, Helene, Mark, Namal. Hey, Namal. Shara, Bob, Savage. Hey, Lucy. Carissa, Mary. Lots and lots and lots of people. So welcome, everyone. Still Prill. Okay, Savage asks, he knows I have an eating disorder. Okay, wait, let me back up. What do you do when your narcissistic ex left you for a model and he throws it in your face just to hurt you? He knows I have an eating disorder and he uses it against me with his new girlfriend who's a model. What do you do with that? I think you let that confirm in your mind that this guy's a jerk. Like hurricanes have categories, right? Like a category 1 is like a tropical storm. Like category 4 is, what was that one big hurricane that went through New Orleans? Why am I drawing a blank? Was it Andrew? I forget the name of that big hurricane. You view it that's like a level 4, level 4 jerk. Katrina, thank you. Yes, of course, Katrina. How could I forget that? That's a Hurricane Katrina kind of move, and it's intentional, and it's designed to cause massive amounts of destruction. It's designed to really hit you at the maximum sore spot, and that's what emotionally abusive people do. It's how they are so effective at hurting other people. So I would try to really look at that and see as, wow, normal people don't do that. Like that's like a really that's low, man. Like that's just low. It's a total like no class move. And so that is not you, that is him. And that's what he's trying to do. Like this is what they do. Like, there's this idea out there that narcissists love themselves. And because they're so grandiose and they're so full of themselves and it's all about them, they don't love themselves. They hate themselves. That's why they act this way, because normal human beings who are like happy, balanced, well-adjusted, and actually like themselves don't do things like this to other people. So and if a person doesn't like themselves, or love themselves, they can't like or love other people. So this is nothing to do with you. He will not change. He will treat her like crap too down the road. It has nothing to do with how thin or tall or whatever. This is them. And it's the whole kind of thing of like, wherever you go, there you are. If a person's emotionally abusive, like they're part of their personality, and changing that is going to take a lot of, like introspection and hard work and like a lot of stuff. So, and unless he's highly motivated to do that, he's not going to be changing anytime soon. He's going to keep hurting people probably till forever, because that's kind of what they do. So it's not you, it's him. And, you know, I would just try to let that verify to yourself that he's a jerk. And that you don't need that. You do not need to be treated like that at all, whatsoever. Yeah, Carissa, that's a great point. She says, I always think about celebrities who get cheated on. Right. I mean, remember the whole thing with, what was it, Hugh Grant and Elizabeth Hurley? Like, she's a model. She is like stunningly beautiful. And he was cheating on her with, I mean, I don't even know where he was. I mean, rough looking women and prostitutes and everything. And they were engaged and the whole line. So it has nothing, it's not you. Like, it's not you. A person either has character, they either have good character or they don't. And so, like, we can't change people, only they can change themselves. And I think if you really think about how difficult it truly, truly is to change, think about anything that you ever tried changing in your own life. I know for me, like losing 10 pounds, like actually more than that now, but like trying to lose 10 pounds or trying to get more organized or that's like not even that major of a thing, right? Can be such a challenge. And so really for a person to do the work needed to really get to that level of like self-examination and reflection and, to do the interior work needed to actually change their character, like how they perceive the world. Once you view it that way, like how massive of a thing that is for a person to actually do, I think it can be a lot easier to walk away from, because you just realize like this person's got some like deep-seated issues. I can't fix them. I don't want, and then you have to ask yourself, would you even want to try? I mean, how long are you talking? Like, are you willing to throw 10, 20, 40 years at this? And how much money? Like 5,000, 10,000, 50,000? Like, where's your line in the sand with what you're looking for? And then you have to kind of ask yourself too, like, are you looking for a partner or are you looking for a project? Because being with somebody and then thinking like, oh, well, I bet I can get them to change, or, they need the change. And so maybe given enough like love or attention or understanding or therapy or rehab or religion or, all of these different things, that maybe someday they'll finally, get some strong moral character and be different than they are. That really is setting a person up for like a lifetime of hurt and heartache. So, when a person shows you their true colors, frankly, you're best to believe them and then drive on. Because this guy, and I know you're in an intense amount of pain right now because he hit you exactly where it hurt with, now he's dating a model, and that's flaring up all of these insecurities within you. But love doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It's the people that don't know how to love that cause hurt. And so I think kind of realizing that and realizing that if a person cares about you, they don't do these things. They don't just kind of stick a fork in your insecurities like that and sadistically cause you pain. So I hope that you are able to block this person and drive on and never reopen that door again, because I will tell you, if you keep going around this cycle with him, if he does come back around, it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, because that's what they do. So you got out of it. I know it doesn't make it any easier to know that you just really dodged a bullet with this one, but you did. And try to just be extra good to yourself right now and be around people that build you up instead of tear you down, because nobody needs that. Like the world is harsh enough, life is harsh enough as it is without, spending our time with people that sadistically enjoy tearing us down. Okay, The Truth Hurts asks, I create videos on my YouTube channel, The Truth Hurts, but now my ex-narcissist creates phony profiles to comment to make me look like a narcissist. How do I deal with this? You can continue blocking this person. You can also contact YouTube. That can be kind of a challenge within itself, but you can send them a message and saying that you are being harassed by this person and see if they can block like her IP address or like what they can do. You can also set all of your comments to where you have to manually approve them. So if I don't know how big your channel is, but I did that for probably until it got to the point where I was getting so many comments I couldn't do that anymore. But probably for like the first 6 months or so with my channel, I was manually going, because I had gotten a few, like just total, not like they weren't like my exes, but they were just really awful comments. And like for me, I get that because I'm putting my life on YouTube. Even though, actually, let me back up. Even though I knew I was going to get a lot of hate, I didn't realize like how much it could really hurt until I started getting that. So just kind of prepare yourself for that too. But I would go through and manually approve. So at least you're the only one that's seeing that. And you can kind of do some damage control if she's continuing to, post stuff. Oh, geez. Mary says, every time I see my ex on the road, he pointed at me with his finger like he's shooting at me. I don't know what to do, and I don't know why he does that. He's doing that to intimidate you. I would say that's incredible. That's a threatening gesture. I mean, you can call the police if you think you know your situation the best. So sometimes, the answer it can be helpful to get police involved. Sometimes that can actually make things worse. So at a minimum, it might make you feel better if you contact the non-emergency police and say that you're not sure what you want to do, that he continues to kind of do these little harassing gestures, that it's intimidating and it's scary, and that you're not comfortable giving your name, but that you were just wanting to talk to an officer about that and see how they can advise you with how to move forward. Odds are that they would want you to fill out a report and do these kinds of things outside of really getting the police involved. And even then, I mean, they could call him and tell him to knock it off, and you could continue to try escalating it. But, that may or may not work. Again, like, your situation the best. I would just try to find, I would try to find different routes to take. And I guess then the other question I would have is he stalking you? Like, how is it that you're coming across him to where he's doing things like this? And how often are we talking about? So if you're concerned that you're being stalked, then that kind of elevates the and puts it into a different level. But, if you live in a small town, or, he lives a block away from where you work, like those kinds of things, I would just change up as much of your routine as possible. If it continues, if you feel like you're in danger, if you feel like calling the police isn't gonna help, and you're like, seriously, like, and I get it, like, if you're like losing sleep, if you're feeling hyper vigilant all the time, it might not be a bad idea to consider moving. I know it's expensive, I know it's inconvenient, but if it's causing you so much distress, then nothing is worth the cost of your inner peace. So if that's what it takes to just kind of ditch this guy and not come across him anymore, then I would say that would be money well spent. And I think anybody out there who's like living in fear and you're able to move, And really, frankly, to me, because nothing is worth my cost of my peace anymore. I'm talking like by any means necessary. So, and I get, for me, it's worth racking up debt. It's worth taking out credit card debt. It's worth taking out a loan. It's worth like doing a Kickstarter campaign. Like it would be worth like by any means necessary. I've got to get sanity back in my life. And I've for sure got to make sure I have safety in my life. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder all the time if somebody's making death threats or, they're freaking psycho. Like if they're doing stuff like that, I would take that very seriously and act accordingly. So, uh, I'm sorry you're going through that. That's incredibly stressful. So let's see. Helene says, is it normal to feel as though it's us against the world with a narcissist? I truly thought our love was so amazingly unique. Is this how every woman feels with them? How do they fake that passion? Well, every narcissist is different because every person is different. I mean, there's certain character traits that repeat with them. So the ones that are real schmoozy and like the love bombing and the intense that create that soulmate level of connection, those kind can be incredibly difficult to get over because they they're not just emotional manipulators, like they truly are like emotional con artists. And I think I think online dating scammers is probably the best example of this kind of behavior where people really do feel like, oh my gosh, I've met this perfect person, and because they're showering them with attention and affection. And if a person doesn't know better, and if they're out of tune with their own intuition, and they've got some empty buckets where they've been lonely, or they've got some unaddressed childhood wounds, which like raise your hand because I think everybody does. So they're experts at sniffing out people's vulnerabilities and then exploiting them to great ends. And if a person doesn't see this as like emotional con artistry in motion, and they mistake that intensity for sincerity, it can be really hard for them to get over that because they're like, but we had this amazing connection. Like, how could they not have felt this too? Like, how could they have felt all of this intensity and then they just leave like I'm nothing? And it's because it's all an act. Like, it's all an act. A lot of them they love the idea of being in love. They love the idea of taking a person, or they love the idea of building a person up to the highest highs to only kick out the ladder from underneath them and then drop them to the lowest lows. So there is no sincere connection there. It's sort of like missing, like with an online dating scammer and how they are. They don't have partners; they only have targets. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with any emotional manipulator or any emotional con artist in any type of arena, whether it's online dating, whether it's like a financial scam, whether it's a dictator, like you've got Hitler or Mussolini or Stalin, or you've got cult leaders, you've got Jim Jones, you've got David Koresh. There's highly problematic, highly manipulative people at all different levels, and they're all in like the same camp, but they all go about things in different ways. So it's I think once you can see it for what it is, that it's a performance that they're doing in order to manipulate, in order to get their way, and it'll take a while to really wrap your mind around that, because it's hard, especially when you've got this person who feels like you're the this you feel this amazing connection with, like, oh my gosh, we shared everything. Like, we shared our deepest secrets, and I felt so listened to and understood, and they gave me so attention. We did everything together. I thought they were my best friend, and the sex was intense and off the charts, and I've never had this connection with anybody. Well, it's like, yeah, because they were doing a lot of that mirroring, and becoming this emotional chameleon to be everything that you needed them to be. And that, if people don't see that, that can really ruin a person, because then they are really torn, feeling like, I can't tell if what happened. Like, I feel like this person is my soulmate, but I also feel like this person might be Satan. Like, I can't quite tell. And that's a problem, right? Like, if you can't tell, is this person Satan or is this person my soulmate? Like, those things are like not even in the same zip code, right? Or at least you would hope that they wouldn't be. So there's a problem when you're trying to sort out, which is it? Is it a fairy tale or is it a Lifetime TV movie? Is it a soulmate or is it Satan? Like, that's, not good, not good. So it really does. And yes, every woman that they are with will feel that way, because that's how they go about manipulating. Just sort of like financial con artists, when they go about manipulating, they have the same shtick. Like, they will go from person to person to person and be like, hey, I got this deal for you, and you're got, 1,000% return on your money, and there's no risk, and then da 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 da. Like the Bernie Madoffs of the world, that's what they do. And they go from person to person, selling in town to town, selling this fantasy of, financial freedom and financial abundance and all of these things. And that's how they go about manipulating people. So they feed into that vulnerability of a person either being afraid that they don't have enough money, or a person, wanting more money. Like, different emotional manipulators tap into different needs, because everybody has vulnerabilities, and everybody's vulnerabilities are different. And that's how they're so effective, because they're emotional chameleons, and they can shapeshift into being whatever they need to be in order to get whatever they want to get. It will help you to write down all of the problematic things, because that can be crazy making when your mind is going back and forth trying to reconcile with, is this person soulmate or is this person Satan? Like, and then if you can really write down like all of the bad qualities, so when your mind is going back and forth, because it really needs to be the deal breaker stuff, that's the deal breaker stuff. And so if you can focus on that, it's because it's sort of like, you've got a glass of water. If the water is 99% clean, that's great. But if it's 1% toxic, then it's 1% toxic, and you need to not drink it. So realizing that it's not like you focusing on the negative. Like, you need to focus on the negative. Like, you need to be able to, and I'm not just saying you, like, we all need to be able to really accurately see a person in a situation accurately, and not have, I don't remember who it was. Was it Sam Vaknin? I think it was. What was it? The malignant optimism, I think is his term. Cause I freaking love that. Because that is like malignant optimism. Like, optimism is seeing the glass half full, right? Pessimism is seeing the glass half empty. Malignant optimism is seeing, the glass 99% full of clean water, and glossing over the 1% toxic water. And it's really important that we see toxic water, because it'll really make you sick, if not kill you, if you continue to ingest it. So it's kind of a long-winded answer. Sorry. Savage says, yes, even his friends told me that he's evil, and I didn't believe them. He also does not let her post pictures of them together, and she loves posting pictures, but he doesn't let her post pictures. Probably because he's got other women. That's like the number one thing, right? So if a person doesn't want to change their Facebook status, or they're not posting pictures of them with their new partner, it's generally because they're sleeping around, and they're a player. Like, they're a player. And so they're trying, you got to keep the game going, right? So that's a game ender if you're being like, I'm in a relationship and like, here's my new partner, unless they're triangulating, which that does happen, but generally and then of course there's all these excuses, right? Like, people don't need to know my business, or like, I just, I'm just a private person, or like, whatever. Like, if you find yourself hearing excuses from somebody and you roll your eyes, or if you tell somebody else and they roll their eyes, that's generally a sign that you're hearing a bunch of nonsense. So, because he'll tell you all about her, right? And send you pictures, but he won't put it on Facebook. So, you know, um, yeah, it's smells like some manure to me. Kat says, I have come to realize that my recent relationships were narcissists. Through your red flags of a narcissist series in your videos, I have worked really hard to heal. I'm worried that I might be a narcissist as well. So a lot of people feel this way. And they worry, right? Because I think it's sort of like when you have some symptoms of something and then you go on to WebMD, and then next thing you know, like 3 hours later, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I not only have the flu, I have like swine flu, and then you're like thinking that you've got like all of these things. So it's super common to see some of these traits within yourself, because narcissists are still people. Like, they're, we were, and I was joking earlier about feeling like they might be Satan. There's definitely that bend in their personality that's really dark, right? But they are people. Like, they're not supernatural. There's not, they're people that have like a really dark side to their personality and a really problematic side to their personality. And, you know, it's not so much with them as to whether, like, the problem with narcissists isn't that they're necessarily like narcissists, or even that they have problematic behavior. But don't get me wrong, like that is problematic. What's more problematic is that they oftentimes don't ever get to the place of self-awareness that they realize that they have a problem. So if a person is always in that stage of like pre-contemplation as far as change goes, like, and I think we've all struggled with this, right? Like, you can go through life in some area and you're like, totally not a problem, totally not a problem, not a problem. And like, you're gaining weight, you're gaining weight, you're gaining weight, you're gaining weight, or you're drinking, or, your spending gets out of control. Like, the behavior gets more extreme, and a person's continuing to justify it and rationalize it and minimize it. And, especially, and this is the whole thing, like with any type of person who struggles with any type of addiction, where people will say, like, you got to let them hit rock bottom. Like, you can't bail them out anymore, because a person has to experience enough pain in order to get motivated to change. But that's the problem with a lot of narcissistic people, is if they don't ever like connect cause and effect. So like, if you're drinking, right? Like, if you're like people that have alcoholism, right? So they're drinking, if they're getting DUI after DUI after DUI after DUI, and they wind up in jail and they start having more and more consequences, it can hopefully become this wake-up call for them, where they realize, my drinking is a problem, because the consequence is tied directly to their drinking. There's not a lot of, and they still will rationalize and minimize and justify or flat out deny it, right? They'll be like, I didn't even have a drink tonight, or I had one, when really they had 6. So if a person is not ready to face their behavior, they're not going to face it. And so with narcissists, if a person's got this abusive behavior, because it's, I think, personality related too, it's really hard, I think, for any of us to directly tie cause and effect. So they can continue to justify and minimize and rationalize and deny their behavior because it's not such a strong parallel like it is like, you know, alcoholism is generally going to like equal a DUI and lots of court costs and loss of a license and jail time and on and on and on. Whereas if a person feels justified in cheating and lying and siphoning funds and stealing and being abusive and, you know, doing all of these things, and especially too, because a lot of that behavior, it's them getting their way. So not only is there not pain associated with that, they're getting their way. So it's the opposite. They're getting their way. They're quote unquote winning. So in their mind, it's like, no, this is not problematic at all, because it's that instant gratification of those, like, it's just that instant gratification, you know, of cheating or of spending money or of doing whatever they're doing. And that's why there's just not a lot of motivation for a person to change when they're not ready, willing, and able to change, and they're not associating pain with their behavior. So, point being, if you're seeing some of this kind of behavior within yourself, you're like, you know what? And I'm just throwing stuff out there. You're like, gosh, you know what? I opened up a credit card account and I didn't tell my ex-husband. And you know what? I cheated on him. And you know what? I did. I lied a lot about, I don't know, how I was spending my money, right? And so you're like, gosh, I see some of this stuff on myself, or I gave him the silent treatment, or, you know, certain things that you might have been doing. If you're seeing these things and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I never realized that was that problematic, or I justified it, I minimized it, I denied it, but now you're seeing it, and now you're starting to piece things together, and you're realizing, because here's where it all comes together. So you're realizing this is not who I am, and this is not who I want to be. That's like the most important. So if you're like, my behavior hasn't been in alignment with my idea of who I am, then you can work you've got the awareness, this is a problem and I want to do something about it. So now you can, like, there's absolutely zero reason as to why a person couldn't change if they have awareness that this is a problem and they're highly motivated to actually address it. You know, change is never easy, and there's always reasons as to why people do what they do. But if you can really do some introspection and kind of figure out, okay, well, what needs was I meeting by having these types of behaviors, or like, where did I get this from? Like, why did I ever think that this was okay to open up credit cards and not tell my spouse, or to cheat on them, or to lie about how I was spending money, or to you know, do XYZ, silent treatment, or what have you, and what can I start doing differently? Because a lot of people, you know, they pick up, so there's a term, you should recommend that you Google it. It's called fleas. Like a dog gets fleas. Not the most flattering term, I know, but it's a term, it's when a person it's the dysfunctional kind of coping mechanisms a person picks up when they are trying to kind of navigate or survive a dysfunctional environment. So if you had a dysfunctional home life or a dysfunctional marriage, and most people do, like, frankly, probably, I think estimates are like 85%. I'd say it's probably closer to like 95%, if even that, maybe like 99.5%. So most people do. Most people have picked up some sort like less than desirable behavior along the way at some point, whether it's been through parents or siblings or their peer group or church or school or their career, or with different relationships along the way. There's all these different like spheres of influence. And if you've picked up this kind of behavior and you're wanting to work towards changing it, then by all means, go for it. Go for it. I've learned a ton about myself doing this whole video series too. And there's a lot of things about myself that I've come to be aware of. I'm like, you know what? Oh my gosh, I did not realize I was doing certain things. Or I realized it, but I didn't realize that it was problematic. And so seeing stuff within myself, I'm like, you know what? Some things need to change. Like, I don't know where I picked that up along the way, but this is not who I am. This is not who I want to be. And this needs to end. So, we're all works in progress. It's whether or not, I guess, we realize that we're works in progress. It's like, that's the issue. I think if anybody out there thinks that they are done, like, yes, I have made it. I no longer need any personal growth whatsoever. I am perfect. Like, beware of those people. Like, just run. Because seriously, if a person thinks they have it absolutely all figured out, they really, really don't. And they're so far away from having it figured out that they can't even see that they don't have it figured out. Like, so it's just all a journey, and we're all on this crazy journey called life together. And it's just doing the best we can. And it's, Maya Angelou said, once we know better, then we can do better. And that's so much of it. Yeah, Helene says, if you're worried that you are a narcissist, you aren't one. Self-reflection is only something empathetic, healthy people have. And Kat says, yeah, is there a possibility that maybe I have just used their approaches against them to cope with being in the relationship? Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We're totally on the same page here with all of that. Yeah, I agree completely. Dusty says, how does seeing a narcissist face to face and ignoring them affect them? Only if it depends on how you go about ignoring them. So, because there's the ignoring that can egg a person on, or there's the like ignoring that's like, I'm done. Like, just general indifference. So if you remember being a kid, if you had a sibling, okay. Now I grew up in like the 70s and 80s, and my brother, my mom, for a while had an old Chevy, and that thing was like a couch on wheels. It was just that freaking, I don't even know how long that car was, like 22 feet long. Like, the thing was giant. I don't even know how she parked it. She has a Prius now, and it freaks me out to have seeing her drive that. So like, the thought of her ever driving like a 22-foot long car, like, makes my palms sweat even thinking about it. But when we were kids, the point of this being, when we were kids, you're in the back seat, and you know how when you've got that little brother or little sister, and they're trying to provoke you, and you're on a long road trip, and they're doing this, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, and they're like this far from you, they're like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, and you're in, like, and the whole goal is to provoke that reaction, right? So where you freak out and like you knock them in the leg, right? Or you start freaking out. You're like, Mom, he won't stop. And then he's like, I'm not touching her, right? It's that whole dynamic. And then if your sibling, so if like, your sibling is like, I'm not touching you, and you're trying really hard to ignore him, and you're just like, right? They know that they're still getting to you because there's still like that emotional energy involved, because you're so intense about not showing a reaction they're not going to let up. They're probably going to, if anything, double or triple up on their provoking to get you to explode. But if you really are just like, I'm freaking done, like, and they're sitting there like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, and you're, back then we didn't have phones or anything. If you're like looking out the window, right? Or you're reading a book or coloring or whatever you're doing when you're a kid, and it's very clear that you've just moved on. Like, okay, dude, fine. Like, you want to just sit there and go like that for the next hour? Like, okay, knock yourself out. Then they stop, because then they know that they're not going to get a reaction out of you. So if you're seeing them in public and you truly have that level of indifference where, just that sense of acknowledgement, like, oh, hey, right? Like if it's obvious that like you see them, they see you, and it's sort of like hey, you know, eh. Like the level of indifference that you would have if you were to see a neighbor that lived 4 houses down that you saw maybe like 6 times in your whole life. Like, oh, hey, what's your name again? Like, just kind of, oh, okay, cool. And then like you go on your merry way, and there's just no reaction there. That kind of stuff really bothers them, because all of this narcissism in general, it's generally because they are so insecure. Like grandiosity is a mask for insecurity, and all of these behaviors, it's just because like it's their way of feeling smug and superior because they feel so inferior. And so not giving them that satisfaction of feeling smug and superior is like the worst thing ever to them, because they work so hard at trying to get that need met. And of course they do it in like this wide variety of like really problematic ways. But if you deny them that, then it's just the worst, because that's all they got. Like that's how they know how to feel significant, is to be problematic. Erica says, so what happens to the 50-year-old narcissist that has done this to people for decades? He continues. Then he becomes the 60-year-old narcissist, then the 70-year-old narcissist, then the 80-year-old narcissist, then the 90-year-old narcissist. Until a person has that realization of what I'm doing is a problem, they continue to do it with anything across the board, whether it's abusing people, whether it's drinking too much, whether it's using drugs, whether it's yelling, which is abuse, whether it's spending too much, whether it's like having an eating disorder, whether it's, you name it. If there's no awareness that there's a problem, a person's going to keep doing it. Which, that's like the catch-22, right? And yeah, Lisa says, narcissists normally get worse as they get older. Yes. Yes, they do. I mean, most of us do, right? Like, most people don't radically change who they are, like, as they get older. Like, if anything, we tend to get more set in our ways. And it's generally because the longer we are a certain way, the more we've built up an identity around that. And the more we've built up this identity of, this is who we are, and this is how we act, and these are my values, and everything that goes along with that, all of our justifications and rationalizations and minimizations and all of that, then now we've got several decades under our belt of justifying our behavior. And it takes a lot. Like it oftentimes takes, it takes freaking wars, like wars between countries, for people to have the wake-up call that if you think about it again, like on a larger level, things that seem now to us as a society, we're like, this is very obviously problematic, like slavery, right? Or like the Holocaust. Again, like larger scale things. How on earth could anybody ever think that it would be okay to buy and sell another human being? And that was probably, and that's really minimizing slavery. I mean, that's just kind of the textbook version of it, but there's obviously like so much more that went on with that. And so how people ever got to the place where that seemed like a reasonable idea, it's just mind-boggling to us now as a society, because it's so not okay. Like, it's so obviously not okay. But it took a civil war, North versus the South, to be like, no, this like needs to end. Like, slavery is not okay. And people, they had their identity built around this. They had their religion tied into this. This was a generational thing. They had their finances tied into this. This was their way of life, and they weren't going to let go of that. And so people really dug in their heels, and they were, it was this, it took war. It took war for people in to realize like this is a problem. So, and again, I think it can kind of help seeing it in a way, like on a larger scale way of just how crazy human beings can be and how we can rationalize like really like slam dunk, no justification, problematic behavior. So when you realize like that people have been doing this since like the dawn of time. People have been rationalizing problematic behavior since the dawn of time. And they will continue doing that. You know, we all do it to some extent. So it's always a good idea to kind of self-examination, like that stuff's lifelong, is always examining our behavior and being like, okay, like where did I get this belief system from? You know, how, you know, like why am I doing what I'm doing? And is this, and am I acting in a way that this is how I would want somebody else to treat me? Basically, like, am I hurting other people? And like just challenging yourself like on your belief systems. It's very, very eye-opening. So it's like, well, do I believe this because my parents believed this, or do I believe this because the community I grew up in believed this, or because my religion believed this, or kind of who am I under all of these social you know, social and economic and political layers? Who am I? I guess that's kind of the big question, right? So it's, I don't know, interesting stuff when you think about it in the larger scale. Let's see. Hey, Marie is here. Welcome. Erica. Peace Pom Pom. I love that name. I love saying that name. Let's see. Cha-cha-cha. Let me scroll down here. I've missed a lot of the chat because I was yammering on here. Savage says, okay, so why do narcissists make fake accounts to watch your social media? Because he does that too. I even feel like his girlfriend has started spying on me. Why does she spy on me too? I think a lot of it is because they're really insecure and they're so hoping that they're like, they want to know that they're getting to you. Like, are you posting about how hurt you are? You know, oh, I hope she's posting. I hope she's posting about how sad she is and how hurt she is. And I hope she's joining all kinds of groups around this, because that they freaking eat that up, because it makes them feel you're dealing with a bully. And it makes them feel so superior to know that they're getting to you. And of course, keep in mind, she's totally manipulated, right? So he's made up this whole story about how you're the problem, how you're the crazy ex. And if she's turned into like a flying monkey, and where, you know, he's getting her to do his bidding and he's convinced her that you're the problem, then most people, when that happens, right? If someone's like, my ex, she was such a bad mother. You wouldn't believe the stuff she did to her kids. Like, I loved those kids like they were my own, and she, you know, did X, Y, and Z. And then most normal, decent people are like, how dare she do that, right? And then they go on the attack. It's like that kind of thing. So they create all kinds of stories about how they're the victim and how, you know, normal, decent people want to defend them. Because especially at first, before like their true colors surface, they can come across as very convincing and charming. And so, especially if they are charming, then, and they're doing all this love bombing, then the new target is feeling like they've met their soulmate. So, you know, what you're in the book Psychopath Free really summed this up well. What is your devalue or your discard stage is somebody else's idealized stage. And so this is part of the reason too, where they're using this idealized stage of this other person to make you feel even worse, like to grind you down, right? And which is incredibly effective, especially if you have no idea what's going on. You're like, oh my gosh, maybe it is me. Like, I kind of can't, I really felt this connection with this person. And it's like they freaking are just, I've never been in pain like this before. And again, a lot of people can mistake this level of intensity for love or for, well, generally sincerity when it's love bombing, but pain after the relationship, this level of intensity is love. But again, love doesn't hurt. Love doesn't destroy another person like this. Like that's not love, that's hate. And so it feels like love. It can feel like love because the emotions are so intense. But that's part of what's known as trauma bonding. It's not it's the highs and lows of an abusive relationship where the person that causes the pain is the only one that can take it away, but then they cause the pain, but then they can take it away, but then they cause the pain. And so it's riding that roller coaster that people often get confused as passion or love, and it's not. It's abuse, and it's toxic, and it'll suck a person's energy and their life, and it's intense. And it sounds like you're going through it, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. If I were you, so point being, if I were you, I would leave those social media accounts open and not be active on them. I would create other ones with totally fake names, like really fake names, not like your first name and your middle name. I mean, like if your name is Jill Smith, to make your new Facebook account John Smith, or actually not even that, like John Reynolds, like something very different. Or, if your name's Jill Smith, to change the account to like Rachel Adams. I don't know. I'm just making up names. So if you're Rachel Adams or, John Smith, please don't email me with hate mail. But you know what I'm saying? Like you create fake profiles. Don't put up real pictures of yourself, and don't friend your friends, because if they're going through your friend's Facebook account and they're seeing like, oh, wait a minute, like who's this new person? But then they can they can make the connection. Oh, well, John Smith has the same last name as Jill Smith. I bet that's her. Or, Rachel Adams has the same pictures as Jill Smith. Then it's obviously her. She thinks she's so smart. She's just going to create a fake account. Like, oh, we're on to her now. So you have to kind of just keep a few steps ahead, but with changing all your stuff. But it's definitely worth it because, they can just, it's hard to heal when you're being harassed. And the sooner you can get some peace in your life and just like decompress from all of this, the better off you will feel. So. No. Kat says, she's talking about her problematic behavior. She says, I didn't realize that I had some problematic behavior that I was doing to this narcissist. Do I need to make amends to him? No, I'm a big fan. It's the AA, I think any anonymous group. This is one of the steps, and I forget which one it is, but it's about making amends to those that we've hurt, unless, and I like this caveat because it's important, unless doing so is going to cause hurt or harm to that person or somehow to ourselves. So reopening contact with an abusive person, even if you're like, you know what, I had some problematic behavior too, doing so there's no absolutely zero benefit from it. There's zero benefit from it. So if anything, like the cost, like the risk versus reward is just absolutely not there. It would suck you back in. It would give them even more fodder to abuse you with. It would just make your life a living hell. And then if you texted it to them, now they've got it in writing and they can create this whole smear campaign. Nope. I would just learn the lessons about your own behavior and be like, you know what? I'm really glad in a way that the situation happened. It brought a lot of my own stuff to light. This is stuff that I am going to work on, and I'm going to drive on. Um, but I'm gonna keep this door closed and just drive on. So that would be my vote for that. Um, Helene says, Dana, what do you feel about finding hard proof and a narcissist still denying infidelity? He constantly declared his faithfulness and loyalty. Was it because he knew he was lying and cheating? Yes. Yeah, people hang on to the bitter end, and especially with people that do wrong and they don't want to admit it, right? So, like, for example, Richard Nixon, the whole Watergate scandal. If you're familiar, I'm not sure if you're in the US or not by the spelling of your last name, but if you're familiar at all with Richard Nixon, he held on to that, like, I am not a crook kind of a thing. He was a freaking crook. Like, he was a liar and he was impeached. I'm pretty sure he was impeached. He was impeached. And he held on to that till the bitter end. Same with Bill Clinton, right? I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And then it was the whole, we're doing the semantics game now, right? Like, oh, well, I didn't know. Like, really? I'm getting having, oral sex in the Oval Office. Like, oh, I didn't realize that counted. Like, I'm going to play stupid now, right? And so he was denying this and denying this and denying this until the bitter end, until he was impeached. I don't know if he ever fully came forward and admitted anything. And actually the whole footage of his trial to me is such a good example of I mean, obviously problematic behavior, but so much of like how a narcissistic person, that person that feels entitled and justified to do whatever they want, the look on his face, like you could just tell, he just had that look of like, how dare you? How dare you put me on trial? Like it was just this anger that was simmering behind him because he was so outraged. Like, how dare you question me? I am the president. I can do whatever I want to do. I told you this didn't happen, and now you're not dropping it. And they kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it because it happened. And he would only admit to the little tiny crumbs that they would find, right? So they'd find more evidence that he like couldn't deny. And then finally he'd admit to that. It's sort of like if a person gets somebody pregnant, right? And they're cheating. And like, what do they normally say? Okay, first it's like, I'm not cheating. You're crazy. You're paranoid. You're jealous. It's all you. I'm not doing anything wrong. And then it's like, oh no, this woman actually is pregnant. How do I even know it's mine? It's not mine. Like, she's crazy. She's obsessed with me. Like, I can't help it. Like, women just love me. Like, they all want this, right? Like, there's just that level of like ridiculousness where they won't admit to it. They won't admit to it. They won't admit to it. And then the woman comes back with like a paternity test, and it's like, no, DNA, like, Maury Povich, like all these shows, right? Like DNA evidence shows like 99.95% you're the father. And then the guy is like, gets all upset, like, oh, I don't know how this could be. But then finally, if he does admit to it, it's like, well, yeah, I had sex with her, but it was just that one time. No, it's not. It never is. It never is. Okay. So then it, so then people are, oh, okay, well, it was just the one time. It was just the one time. And then he's like, well, I didn't even enjoy it. And she means nothing to me. And it's, frankly, she was throwing herself at me. And then if their, like if their target doesn't believe that, then they shift it around to, well, you were working all the time. And well, we had all these communication issues within our relationship. I just didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy with things. And so I really feel like we need therapy. Like, but it's just nonsense. It's just talk. They just keep talking until they say enough of the right things that they get their way. Like, that's how they manipulate. So it's very, very common for them to continue holding on to these lies to the bitter end. And it's that level of entitlement that I don't owe you the truth, right? Like, that's their thinking of like, if I said it didn't happen, it didn't happen. Like, yeah, I know. Like, I know I got like DNA evidence, and I know you got, or even if you don't have hard proof, right? Like, even if there's enough evidence there, because, and even that's like, even if you've seen texts, I don't know. It's so difficult because they always have an excuse for everything. Everybody does. Freaking 3-year-olds do, right? If they get caught doing something, like they will throw out any, and depending on how smart the kid is, right? Like if they're really a clever kid, they're going to throw out every single excuse in the book trying to get out of things. So it's what people do when they're trying to get out of being accountable for their bad behavior. So the other part of that too is when a person consistently tells you their character, there's a problem. So if a person's sitting there telling you, I am an honest and good and faithful person, I would never open up credit cards in your name. Like, you're like, wait a minute, what? Like, why would you even say that? Because, or I would never cheat on you. And they go to great lengths to tell you about their character. And the problem with that is, talk is cheap, talk is free. Actions always trump talk. Always triumph over talk. I don't even like saying Trump talk. Actions, it's all about actions, right? Because anybody can say anything. It doesn't make it true. I can tell you that I'm 6 feet tall and blonde. I'm not. Like, if you're seeing that that's not adding up, then there's a problem. If somebody's telling you, making it a point to consistently tell you, you can trust me. I'm honest. I'm sincere. I would never cheat. I'm loyal to the bone. Blah, 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 blah. But their behavior is pointing otherwise, then you're being manipulated. That's what manipulation is. It's when words and actions don't line up. So it's pretty common. And again, normal, decent people don't see this stuff coming. I dated a guy that did that kind of stuff. I was in an abusive relationship when I was in high school, and that was the scariest, craziest situation. And thank goodness I didn't even realize it was abusive until I began, like, freaking 20 years later, began working at a domestic violence shelter, because he never hit me. But it was everything else. I lived in absolute fear of this guy for years after this ended. He stalked me and harassed me, and it was the threats, like the other gal was saying, making like kind of comments like he had a gun, or I mean, he never did like that kind of stuff, but it was always comments like, he'd make threats about, if you want to see your brother again, you better call me back. Stuff like that, where I just didn't connect that. I knew it was problematic, but I thought I was overreacting because I don't know. It was just all of it, all of the manipulation, all of the cheating. There were so many other women, and took me decades to even really see that part of it, because I didn't have like concrete evidence. But it's like, I don't know what I was looking for. Like, you're probably not going to walk in and find them in bed together. Like, the evidence, and this was before cell phones. So like, the evidence is squirrely behavior. Like, that's your evidence, because normal people don't have squirrely behavior. So, and I think even at one point he was joking around. Not even really joke. I mean, it's gaslighting. Like, he wasn't joking around, but I think it was funny to him how much he could get me to believe. And he even said at what point, like, what are you going to believe, me or your eyes? So that tells you right there, like, how powerful denial, like gaslighting is, and then denial on our end. Because I didn't want it to be true. So... let's see. Hey, Cecilia's here. Hi. AJ says, Dana, I could use your advice. My ex has applied to court for contact to my youngest child. I'm scared as he abused my other sons and me. How can I make a court understand I'm dealing with NPD? I would not Well, here's what I would do. If you have any type of evidence whatsoever about him abusing you or your other children, then I would definitely, at a minimum, like from here on out, I would document everything with like pictures, with video, with other people, like third party witnesses, with getting stuff done through like voicemail, text messages. You really try to want to avoid he said, she said type situations. And then, of course, too, like you want to be on your best behavior. So the judge doesn't just see this and be like, these people are just drama. Like you want to make it very clear cut. This person is abusive. This is what they're doing. Like I am not reacting to it. And I know it can be so incredibly difficult when you've got that person that's continually trying to provoke you and they're hitting all of your buttons. So keeping a paper trail would be the first thing I'd recommend if you haven't started doing that already. If there's a history of abuse in your past, I would contact your local domestic violence shelter and I would ask them if they have any ideas for you, if they can help you in any way, shape, or form, if they can recommend a good attorney that's familiar with domestic violence. So I would come at this approaching it from a domestic violence situation instead of a narcissistic personality situation, because I will tell you, the vast majority of people out there, and even including like domestic violence workers, do not connect narcissistic personality disorder with abuse. For some reason, there's like that connection is not made. So people still think of narcissists as just really arrogant and self-centered and grandiose. Like the whole, even it's, oh God, it's just so frustrating. So I would contact them. I would go at it from a domestic violence standpoint. Domestic violence doesn't have to just be physical violence. It can be abuse of any kind. And there's 7 different kinds. So, physical, emotional, verbal, spiritual, sexual, financial, psychological. So I would try to get them on your side and I don't know. It depends on your situation. It depends on a lot of different things. Yeah, I would contact the domestic violence people. If it's bad and you're truly scared, this would be a point where I would contact an attorney, but I would consider possibly moving as far away as you possibly can. If that's even an option, I don't know. That's why I'd say talk to an attorney and see. But I would definitely try to build as much of a case as you can and make it as difficult as you possibly can. So you can protect your child as best as you possibly can. Vanta says, I've realized everyone I've dated has been narcissistic. It's dangerous. Yes. I think a lot of people, myself included, I would say the vast majority of the significant relationships in my life have been with either like, not just relationships, like friendships, have been with people knowing what I know now that are like really problematic, like borderline, like major borderline kind of stuff, major narcissistic, major highly problematic personality kind of stuff people. But if you can figure out what vulnerabilities that they're exploiting, then you can be better to put a stop to it. So for me, it was all of the kind of the rushing of intimacy, the whirlwind situations that they created. I think I felt very unloved and very unimportant for a large chunk of my life. And so when people were very quick to make me feel very loved and very important, within like a week we're best friends, or within, a week they're talking about being in love with me. Like those things weren't registering as the red flags that they are. They were registering as the opposite. Like, oh, this is so great. Like, we have so much in common. And because it felt like this, like, it was all of the mirroring. Like, oh my gosh, they like everything I like. Like, this person's so awesome, right? Which sounds so narcissistic, right? But it's not. It's that like people. So it's a weird thing that humans do. I think on a more of like a neurological level, it's our way of staying safe because we know we can trust somebody if they're like us. So if we're able to establish that rapport, or they're able to establish that rapport with us, then there's that instant connection, that premature connection that's there, that is not sincere, but boy, does it really feel like it. And this happens in a wide variety of ways. This happens when people, they might say, they might, let's say, I don't, and I'm just throwing out examples. They might be a car mechanic or a realtor and talk about how they are, the area's Christian mechanic, or the Christian or the Jewish realtor, right? And they might really be using their faith or their religion to tap into those communities and to get business. Um, it's manipulative. Like, that stuff, even if they truly are super Christian and super Jewish, right? Like, really on the level about their faith, it's manipulative, and that's it's not cool. But it works, and that's why people do it. It's the same thing. Like, so with highly like emotional manipulators at any level, right? So it's sort of like, okay, oh my gosh, you like that song? I like that song too. And then there's all of this heavy mirroring that goes on to where that's how that soulmate connection is established. Or if you've got a person that's sitting the same way, and they're and some people, we all do this naturally to some degree, but con artists really, really, really are great at being able to read people and exploit vulnerabilities. So they can just hone in on, okay, this person's lonely, or this person's really needs or responds well to compliments, or this person, uh, you know, kind of whatever, like, needs money, or, and then they toy with that until they get what they want. Yeah, Diane says emotional con artists. That is such a perfect way to describe narcissists. That really resonates with my heart. That term, it's so dead on. So yeah, Peace Pom Pom we're on the same page with that. Yeah, she's saying, talking with AJ's situation, the courts deal better with examples. Rather than trying to prove narcissistic personality disorder, see if you can compile a strong set of examples of inappropriate, irresponsible behavior. Yes, I would also add in that, dangerous, destructive, or deadly. So anything that even comes across as like abuse or neglect, I would start making a paper trail. I would really, if you can really get like a local domestic violence shelter involved, there's a lot more pull. They have a lot more pull with that, and potentially a lot more resources. So I would utilize that resource. Helene says, this is just so hard to wrap my head around, Dana. Ugh. I know. I know. I know. I get it. I totally, totally get it. Write it down. Write it all down. Because when that nostalgia kicks in and you're having a hard time trying to figure out what you're dealing with, when you can look at it in your own handwriting, or if you can make a video talking to yourself and saying, this is what he did, this is what this text message is that I saw, this is like this, and you're reminding yourself of the reality of this situation, because it's denial is a powerful thing, and it's crazy making when we're like, hindsight, and like, how on earth did I overlook these things? Or What's wrong with me? Why do I still love this person? Why do I keep going back? How did I forget that? Like, how did I forget certain like pretty major things? And it's denial. It's a psychological defense mechanism that comes in really handy when we know the truth but wish we didn't. And there's a reason that our brains do that. And generally, it's because that relationship, that dynamic, whatever we're having denial about, whether it's a bad relationship or a bad, like a toxic relationship or a toxic work environment or, what have you, our weight, our drinking, our spending, like what have you, whatever we're in denial about, if what we're doing is meeting some sort of need and we're not prepared to let go of that behavior because it's meeting some sort of need, then we're going to continue denying it and justifying it and minimizing it. And it's the same across in any context. So like, for example, I use this example a lot, like with, if a person has a bunch of rotten food in their refrigerator, but it's like, okay, like if you've ever had like a hunk of cheese, right, in your refrigerator and it's moldy and you're like, well, and you're really hungry and like you don't want to go to the store and you're like, well, I'll just cut around that. Or if you grew up with like parents like mine, like where you used up every single thing up until like it was gonna make you really sick. So like we were eating moldy cheese and cutting around it and doing all that. And but like if you're trying to convince yourself like that there's still something edible here because there still kind of is, then it's really hard to let go of that. It's much easier to clean out your fridge and get rid of the moldy food, the toxic food, after you've gone grocery shopping. So it's a lot harder to clean out your fridge because then it's like, oh no, now I don't have any food. But if we know we have food, like there is more cheese, like like I can replace the cheese, then it's a lot easier to clean out the old because you're bringing in the new. So it's the same thing with like anything that's not serving us, right? If we're in a really toxic job situation that's making us, let's say, physically ill, right? Like we're working for this total nightmare of a boss, and our life is a living hell. If we feel like we don't have any other job prospects and we need a job in order to pay our bills, it's gonna be really hard. It's really hard for a person to leave that situation if they don't feel that they have any other options. It's a heck of a lot easier to leave a job once you have another one lined up. It's a heck of a lot easier to walk away from a toxic relationship or a toxic friendship and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying line up another relationship, but if you can line up other sources of like companionship. So not dating. It's a really good idea to like bench yourself and like take a time out for about a year. I know. Yeah, I said that. I know. But it's true because there's a lot of healing that needs to be done, and getting real in alignment with you and what that whole like level of self-exploration and relearning, what nourishes you, what gives you energy, what drains your energy, the people that give you energy, the people that drain your energy, the situations that give you energy, the situations that drain your energy, like how good behavior, what a nourishing environment feels like, what a toxic environment feels like all of these things. And it's this whole process of like reconnecting to yourself. So hopefully while you're going through that whole process, during that time, if you're able to reach out and make connections with people, I'm a huge fan of the site meetup.com. It's worldwide. It's free. I'm not sponsored by them. I have met really, it's the general public. So like it's kind of a mixed bag of people. But I've met some really great people from there, and I've met some really strange people from there. But it's always interesting. Like either way you dice it. So if you're just, it can be great to go out and expand. It's important to expand your support system and to have some supportive support system in place. And it makes it a lot easier to walk away from what's not serving you, what's not working for you, when you feel like you have options. Because if you don't, then it's that attitude of scarcity versus that attitude of abundance. And when any of us are operating from that attitude of scarcity, then we're in an emotional scramble and we're not thinking clearly and we don't realize it. And this is one of the reasons they say, don't make any major life decision or any major change after any major anything, after a divorce or after a death, because people, that sense of stability in their life, it's like that chair gets knocked out from underneath you. And what oftentimes happens, right, is people are in this emotional scramble. They don't even realize it. And they find themselves doing all kinds of really wild things, like really terrible things, like meeting people that are obviously problematic, but not to them because they're not thinking clearly, or they decide, you know what, I'm going to move across the country, or I'm going to, they get this, they feel like I'm in this, fresh start, and they have this sense of euphoria and enthusiasm about wanting to start over, but then they start like really making all these radical changes, and then this kind of perpetuates on itself because now they're making all of these major changes from a place of this attitude of scarcity, which creates this scramble, which tends to lead to really poor decisions, but then they don't realize it, which leads to even more like emotional insecurity, which leads to more of a scramble, which leads to more poor decisions, which leads to them not realizing it, which leads to more of a scramble. Like, and it's just this cycle. And it can take a person quite a while to break free from that. I mean, I think that was very much what happened to me. I went through a divorce, and I didn't realize how like emotionally off kilter that made me. And I had met Jack when I was separated, and it was very clear, like we were going to be getting divorced. Met Jack when I was separated. My ex had also found somebody. It was just sort of like, now we're finalizing the paperwork kind of a thing. And it was like, hindsight being what it is, he was red flag city. But I didn't see it because he came across as Prince Charming. He totally was able, I'm sure, like he was able to sniff out my vulnerabilities a mile away. I was in a total pretty much strange place. I didn't know anybody there. And it was just like the perfect storm for me to get sucked into this bad thing. And then that kicked off like this whole, for a handful of years, it was, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was like poor decision after poor decision after poor decision. And it was this scramble that I was in. And it's sort of like kind of realizing that you're in quicksand, and so you're trying to swim to get out of it, but the more movement you make, the deeper you sink. And it took me like quite a while to realize what the heck was going on, because then I was like, why am I this magnet for all these problematic people? Like this, like what is going on, and what am I missing? Like, how am I not seeing this? And I just got really curious about why this kept happening, and what am I missing? Like, I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person and have a decent amount of insight into, things. So, but obviously I don't. So like, what, and then it was just kind of this whole journey for me, putting the pieces together and reading a ton about all of this and joining all these support groups and talking to all these other people. So what I'm sharing with you, and I'm sharing this with you not because I think my experience is, your experience, but I think that all of these experiences tend to stem from very similar vulnerabilities. All of these vulnerabilities are exploited in very similar ways. We're all basically telling the same or different versions of the same story. And so there's a lot of benefit, I think, in sharing experiences and sharing aha moments, so we can kind of wake up and be like, okay, I think there it is. Like, that's where I was going wrong. And so that's what I need to tweak, or this vulnerability I need to address. And oftentimes it doesn't take, massive amounts of change in order, to lead us to be in a very different place. Like sometimes it seriously is like 2 or 3 aha moments. You're like, boom, life changed. And then now it's just putting those in motion and then continuing to practice them. And that's kind of like the next step in all this. So like then you start seeing problematic, you wake up to it. Like you wake up to problematic behavior in other people and then within yourself. And it's like, oh my gosh, I never realized that this was an issue. I mean, it's really, really, it's just a constant learning curve to all of this. So I would encourage you, it will help to increase your support system and to get back into that attitude of abundance where because once you get used to feeling good, you're going to be very hypersensitive to when you feel bad. And then it becomes a no-brainer. It's sort of like, you know what it feels like to eat a delicious sandwich, and you don't want to eat a rotten, like if you drink a glass of, milk and you're like, oh, this is delicious, then versus a glass of spoiled milk and you're like, ugh, no, it's not, like, not, I'm not even going to try to make that work, because you know how good, something else can taste. And so I would encourage you, try to get used to feeling good. That's probably, start there. Like that's a really, really good step, because when you're used to feeling good, there's a lot of peace in your life. Like you're not having to justify anything. You're not having to try to justify squirrely behavior and somehow try to convince yourself that it's not squirrely or that it's not problematic, because you're just used to it. You're like, oh, so nice. Like, having these people around that are positive and optimistic and they're supportive, and we have this honesty and this trust and this open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, and things are just really easy, and I don't feel continually knocked off balance by them, and we're not fighting, and there's just none of this. Like it's just nice. Like we can just hang out and have a nice time. And that's so nice. Like it's just like once you kind of get used to enjoying that, then a lot of other things just start falling into place. But it does. It takes time. It takes time, especially if you're tangled up with somebody who was incredibly, charming and came across as this intense soulmate connection. That is, I think, really, really difficult for a person to see fully for what it is and then to drive on. But it can be done. Okay. Yeah, Diane says, oh, I just lost, oh, there it is. Emotional con artist. Oh, they would be considered an emotional con artist because they have hidden intentions and it makes it impossible to have any real interaction. Right. I mean, and that's well said. So like it's the difference between, if you're a teenager, let's say, right? And like I just had one of those moments where I just felt really old. I was going to say, you needed gas money, like $10. Like you needed to hit your mom up for $10. That would get you that like 3 gallons of gas. If you wanted to go around the block. Gosh, yikes. Okay, so if if you needed to borrow, if you're like, oh, mom, I really want to go out this weekend, can I, borrow, I don't even know, like, whatever kids borrow, like, can I have $20, right? And I'll pay you back later. Like, if that's your true intention, then just like normal people, like if you can be honest about your true intentions, right? Like, hey, mom, can I borrow $20? And then your mom says yes or no. And then you figure it out, right? Like hopefully you ask your other friend, hey, can you drive? I've got no gas in my car. Can you drive? And I'll drive next weekend, or however you work that out, versus somebody who's manipulative, who's emotionally manipulative and would be like, Mom, I just love you so much. I just so enjoy these talks we have, and I just really appreciate you being there for me, and really using a lot of that, um, love and charm and this connection that we have and the guilt, right? Like, you're so great. And then, oh, hey, by the way, I was going to go out with Cindy. Can I borrow $20? Like, that's emotionally manipulative. And especially if the whole thing preceding to that was like, I'm really going to butter her up and then I'm going to hit her up for money. Like, not cool. Just be on the level. Like, people, just be on the level. Like, life's so much easier. I don't even understand. I feel like life is so difficult as it is, and it's so exhausting as it is, just living life. Like, I do not even understand how people have all of this energy to freaking, like, plot and plan and connive and like doing all this stuff. I'm like, my goodness, like, if you could channel that energy into something positive, like, you could freaking take over the world, like, in a good way. I don't understand all of that wasted energy with all of that nonsense and puppeteering. It's just exhausting. Savage says, can you tell me more on why he is hiding his model girlfriend relationship on social media? She's actually popular on Instagram, and he does not let her post pics of anything of him. And also, he is social. It's probably because he's got other girls and he doesn't want to blow his cover. Because then, how is he going to do damage control on that? I just can't even think of like any other reason. Like, why wouldn't he? Right? I mean, it's sort of, there's this phrase out there called Occam's razor. And kind of long story short, and you can Google it, it's where kind of the simplest answer is often the correct one. And it's kind of this concept, like, if you live in Arizona and you hear the sound of hoofs, it's probably not a zebra, right? Like, it's probably a horse. So if somebody's doing something, right? Like, if they're normally on social media and they're normally posting pictures of stuff, and he's talking about like how, this girl, she's so great and la la la, but then he gets squirrely, and now all of a sudden he's like values his privacy, but only in that one way. Like, he doesn't want to post pictures of them or of her. I can't think of any other reason other than he's got other women that he doesn't want them to find out about each other. Like, that's the only reason that comes to mind. Did you ever see, and you're probably too young, there was a movie, this is, man, I'm like really dating myself. This is an old movie, but it was a really good movie. And it was back in like the 90s. I think it was Def Jam's How to Be a Player, if you guys remember that. And I think it was Bill Bellamy. Like, now that I'm thinking, I think it was Bill Bellamy that was like the player. And he had all these women, and like his sister hated that. And so then this whole movie was like his sister and her best friend that were trying to frame him and like get him busted. And of course, it's like this silly movie, and like, I don't want to give it away, but in many ways it did a great job. And of course, this movie's from like 1995, so this was like pre-internet, pre-cell phone. I think he had a pager. So, but how a guy was able, or it could be a girl too, like, to be a player and keep all of these different plates spinning, right? And just manipulate like all of these different people at the same time to where they're not knowing about each other. So I don't know if you could find it on Netflix or YouTube or something, but it's a good, like, it's pretty eye-opening. And I would say it's probably, it's an extreme version of how players operate, but there's a lot of truth to that. Um, oh yeah, totally. Blue says, Also, I've noticed that narcissistic people are also very paranoid. They have a way of convincing others of their deluded stories to help people, to get them to help them. Yeah. Yep. They totally do. It's the most wild thing, and that's probably the most common thing with abusive people in general. It's this attitude of, well, first off, it's the look at what you made me do. So in their mind, they're like, well, I had to. Like, I had no choice. Like, I had to cheat on you or lie to you or steal from you or hit you or yell at you because of what you did. Like, you didn't give me enough attention. You criticized me. You got home late from work. You burned dinner. Like, you did all these things. And it's such an immature mindset, right? I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's not even the behavior, it's the mindset that's driving the behavior. And this is why people often talk about when you're dealing with narcissists, like you're dealing with a child in an adult body. And so it's not just like them stopping this behavior. You're talking, I mean, they've got a lot of catching up to do. So if a person is emotionally 6 years old, but frankly, that kind of feels like an insult to 6-year-olds, because I know a lot of 6-year-olds that have more insight than that and realize that that's not a good justification just because somebody comes over, somebody does something like they, you know, I don't know, sneeze on your lunch or something by accident, that's not a good reason to punch them. Like kids know, I mean, like these things are like, people tend to have this stuff figured out by like first or second grade. So when you're dealing with an adult that doesn't have that figured out, that feels that level of entitlement, and they feel like that's completely reasonable and rational, like you uh, didn't want to do what I wanted to do in bed, so of course I had to get prostitutes. Like, I don't understand, like, what you don't understand. I mean, like, it's so crazy making, right? Because you're just like, really, like, how do you not understand this? But then trying to talk sense into, trying to make logical sense of an illogical argument or an illogical mindset or an illogical situation, it's crazy making. And you'll have more success like arguing with a brick wall, because you're not going to get through to them because there's no accountability. And that's, I mean, like, what, you can't work with that. That's not the attitude of that's needed for any type of teamwork, like, let alone a relationship, you know? So I've got some questions here. Lily asked real quick, can a person with a personality disorder have other mental illnesses too? Absolutely. Yeah. People very rarely just have like one thing. Um, it's especially when you're talking about like mental health kind of stuff. Like it generally is. It's generally not just like narcissistic personality disorder or like antisocial personality disorder. It's generally like that and PTSD and, oh gosh, any type of like, probably any number of like addiction issues, possibly like paranoid personality disorder, possibly, intermittent explosive disorder, possibly bipolar, possibly, who knows, possibly schizophrenia, possibly, people are complex. Like it's just very rare that a person has one thing. And, um, so there's just lots of stuff at play, you know. Where I work, we I work with adults that are personality disordered and are persistently mentally ill. So like they have chronic mental illness. There's also like an older adult section there. And so different people throughout their lifespan, they're going to have different challenges at different stages in their life. And so what we might be dealing with well, actually, we also, the agency that I work for, there's also children. So you have children, you have lifespan. Like you have children, you have teenagers, you have adults, and then you have seniors. And there's different challenges and issues at every level there. And so, you know, so the older adults, that's when people get really complicated, because then you might be dealing with, okay, you've got a personality disorder, and you've got mental illness, and you've got potentially Alzheimer's, and you might have electrolyte imbalances, and they might also have diabetes, right? And so it's just, sometimes it's a person's behavior can be mental illness, and oftentimes, if it is mental illness, if they get on the right medication and they find the right regimen for them, it's absolutely life changing, and they can go on to live, fairly normal, adjusted, happy, healthy lives. They're not like a schizophrenic. They're a person that has schizophrenia. Like this is just a thing, like a person that has diabetes, and it's able to be managed, and it's not potentially debilitating. But then there's some people that might have a mental illness where it's incredibly hard to get it under control, and they might even be incredibly invested in getting in their care and trying to get better. And we're complicated. And so even if a person is, and again, like I have patients like the wide range of the spectrum. I have people that are there because they're court ordered to be there, and then there's people there that only come when they when things get really, really bad for them, then they come, or they recently get out of a hospital, like a mental hospital, and then now all of a sudden they've hit this rock bottom. They realize that things are a problem, and then they're invested in their care for a few months, and then they get to feeling better again, and they're like, you know what, I'm fine. I don't need medication. And then we see them 9 months later when they get out of the hospital again. Some people are totally stable, and you would not even guess in a million years that they are challenged with a mental illness. Some people, I don't even think are that are our patients are mentally ill at all. I think it's total personality disorder, and they're incredibly manipulative, and so it's just like all of this. There's just so much that we don't know about the human brain, and I hope within my lifetime that people that are way smarter than I am are going to be able to come up with solutions and ideas for all of this, because it's just, I think medically and even psychiatrically, we're still in like the infancy of all of the understanding of all of this, personality disorders and mental illness, and physical disorders, and kind of treating the body holistically instead of systems, which is what we do now in medicine, right? And that's so weird, because it affects everything in your body. Everything affects everything. So, yeah. So this is why it's important to look at, because just because there might be treatments out there for something, like there are treatments out there for schizophrenia, right? Like there are treatments out there for alcoholism. There are treatments out there for diabetes. There are treatments out there for trauma. But it's not so much are there treatments out there, it's whether or not that person is, how motivated they really are to utilize those treatments. And then also too, there's that wild card of how effective are those treatments for that person. So while certain medications or certain forms of therapy or what have you might be highly effective for a certain percentage of people, they don't work for everybody. And this is why I encourage people, look at the behaviors and get really clear on what do you want for your life. And that can feel really judgmental and really harsh. But it's And I think a lot of people struggle, especially if they're like, I think my mom's mentally ill, or I think, or, or even thinking about, putting mental illness and personality disorder stuff aside, like Alzheimer's, right? So think about people that have a parent that has Alzheimer's, and they have this tremendous, or they have a child with intense special needs, where they're like, we cannot handle this. Like, it's, I love my child, I love my parent, I can't have them live with us. Like, this is just so this is so far above what we can even handle. And they're oftentimes overcome with guilt and grief at having to put them in a group home or an assisted living place because they can't handle it. And that happens too. And it's knowing kind of what you can handle in your life. And everybody's got their limit with stuff. And I know, I get how cruel that might sound and how judgmental that might sound, but it can really just sink a person, trying to really continually overextend themselves like that, to where they're like, I can't do this. So knowing your limits with anything. I hope that answered your question. So hold on, somebody's gotta write this down. Just a second. Okay. Savage says, but isn't it a good thing that she has all of his social media passwords? My guess is he's hiding something. And he's making it seem like he's not by giving her passwords. So I don't know if he's got other accounts, or I don't know how I just don't buy it. Like, there's just that to me. And I've seen this kind of stuff before where it's like, I want you to trust me, so here's my phone. Feel free to go through it. But then what's really going on is, then, like, behind the scenes, they're making sure right when they pull in the driveway that they're deleting the Tinder app, that they're clearing out text messages, that they're deleting browsing history. And then they're intentionally leaving their phone around the house, and like wanting their partner to feel like they can be trusted by doing things like that. So, and I know that all of this must sound so crazy to people that don't experience this. Like, I'm sure I must sound like a total wackadoo talking about, I must sound incredibly paranoid, like talking about the links of stuff that people go to, but I'm telling you, like, this is the stuff that goes on out there, and it's real, and it happens so much more often than people realize. And you go on Craigslist, like, go on Match.com, go on eHarmony. There's so many people out there that, I get these comments on YouTube every now and again, like, oh, you're bitter and jaded, or I feel sorry for you, you're paranoid, stuff like this. And I just think, oh my gosh, I feel sorry for you, because your eyes are so not open to this. And, like, people that just it doesn't even cross their radar, and they're so, they just, they're not on the lookout for it. And, like, why would they be? Like, right? I wasn't either, in that you get burned, and then you get open, you realize your eyes get open to it, and you're like, oh, ways people manipulate that you would never think in a million years. But people, they do. So if he's doing squirrely things, but then he's going to links to be like, no, here's my passwords. Like, there's something more going on there. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. Yeah, Quentin said, mine said that I'm a private person. And that was how they justified, no pictures on social media and um, those kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good excuse. Excuse me. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. Blue asks, do most narcissists constantly bring up all the things they do for you, even if it's like basic things that every adult should be doing for themselves? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like they might do something nice, but then there's always strings attached and they will hold it over your head until the day you die. So if they brought you soup because you had the flu, you will hear about that soup 417 times over the next 60 years of your life. And to them, they're like, no, this is proof. Like, this is proof I brought you soup. That means I'm a good parent. That means I'm a good husband or I'm a good girlfriend. And it's like, that's like the one thing they point to. But, and if you've grown up with a narcissistic parent and they've got those like handful of things that they did, like the one birthday party where they got you this great cake, or, and there probably literally is like no more than a handful. Like these are the things that they did. And I think it's interesting too, because I think nowadays narcissistic parents are very different with social media, whereas before the crumbs that they would give were often they didn't go to great lengths because nobody else saw. So narcissists are all about getting that constant validation. And so with social media, a lot of them will go to really great efforts to be like, I'm the most amazing parent ever, like birthday party of the year, Disney vacation, like I'm an amazing dad or I'm an amazing mom, look at me. And it's freaking all over their social media page. And so if you didn't know that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde side of them, if you didn't know the Mr. Hyde part, the abusive part, you would really think this person is a really devoted, dedicated, loving parent. But those closest to them know, oh yeah, this person is parent of the year when everybody else can see it. It's what happens after everybody leaves or when things don't go their way, or they become Mr. Hyde and they're an absolute freaking terror to their children and to their spouse. And so, but again, normal, decent people don't realize these things. And so when they start experiencing these two very different sides of this person and they're trying to reconcile this, it's very difficult. Because again, it's what am I dealing with here? Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde? Is it more Dr. Jekyll? Is it like 90% Dr. Jekyll and 10% Mr. Hyde? Or is it 60% Dr. Jekyll and 40% Mr. Hyde? And like, at what point is it a problem? And this is why most people don't realize that they're in an abusive relationship, because I think in a large part, a lot of how abusive relationships are talked about, it's this idea that it's physical, like not just physical abuse, but very obvious, very extreme physical abuse, like a black eye or a person getting so beat up that they're in the hospital, or broken bones. And if it's not that extreme, and if it's not a man physically abusing a woman, then it people don't see it. So when if whatever situation we're in, if it doesn't match our idea of what we think the situation is, then it's really hard for our mind to connect that this is that, right? Because it's like that's not what we thought in our head. Like it's just happening differently. And so when a person's okay, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, in their mind, an abusive person looks abusive. They look like a wolf in wolf's clothing. They look like the husband from Sleeping with the Enemy, right? Like that guy looked problematic, right? Like he never smiled, and he walked around with a scowl, and he was a jerk. Like I mean, everybody like, ooh, the guy skeeved everybody out, and he was a freaky, scary dude. But most abusive people aren't like that. Most abusive people, yes, there are the wolves in wolves' clothing, but then there's a lot of the wolves in sheep's clothing. And so where they can go back and forth, where they can be, it's prince, or princess charming, and then, prince or princess harming. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And so when people are seeing this, it's like, what am I experiencing? What's going on? Do they have some sort of mental illness? Are they bipolar? Is it because of their childhood? This is really problematic behavior. Why are they like this? They weren't like this before. What's going on? Maybe it is me, because they weren't like this is a new thing. Like this just started, or this started right after we got married, or this started right after we had a baby, or this started right after we bought a house, or this started, it always kind of starts off seemingly out of the blue, and then it just tends to escalate over time. And it takes a while for people to connect that this is in fact abuse. And a lot of times, frankly, all of this stuff, unfortunately, and this makes me really, really want to spit nails, is this stuff is really minimized within, I think most therapists tend to minimize this. And because they also have these misconceptions about what abuse is, and who can be abusive, and who can be a target of abuse, and what the dynamic is. And so if they're continuing to treat an individual issue, which is an abusive behavior is an individual issue. It's not a shared issue. It's not a relationship issue. It's not, if I change my behavior, I can make them change their behavior. That's not how this goes. Abusive behavior, it's 100% on them. Like, you can't turn yourself inside out into like this emotional pretzel and walk on eggshells and somehow have some sort of impact on them. Like, they need to get their own stuff resolved before they ever get into a relationship, which is why couples counseling, in my opinion, is incredibly dangerous and incredibly destructive, and is a big fat waste of time and energy and money, and can cost. It's because if you don't start off with the right diagnosis, then you're not going to have the right treatment. And if from the if it's being misdiagnosed as this is abusive behavior, it's a relationship issue, and then they're going to continue to work with you on how to make this work, then they've unknowingly and unwittingly are now in collusion with this abusive person. And especially if this abusive person is incredibly manipulative, which they are, and now they're being like, well, see, we just didn't, we need communication, and they're telling this therapist, they're pretending, especially if they're charming, right? Like, they're just feeding into that of, oh boy, I think this is really working so great, and I'm so glad. It's too bad we waited so long to go to therapy. I mean, I really think things are different. We're turning a corner, right? And so they just can manipulate and manipulate and manipulate, and generally what happens is they just get better at hiding their behavior, or their behavior might continue, but if they can get the therapist to agree that their partner has some part in things, then what happens is then the partner is being blamed for having a part in this abusive behavior, and then they're walking on eggshells trying to change, and it's a freaking mess. It's awful. And that's not to say that all therapists are like that. They're definitely not. There's a lot out there that are super familiar with the dynamics of abuse, and those are worth their weight in gold. But if you get a therapist that can't tell the difference, and that they only think abuse is physical, then that's a big problem. And because they're not going to be able to accurately diagnose, let alone treat the whole situation of what's going on. So, oh gosh, I'm way behind on the chat here. Connected says, can you please explain needing to experience more pain as a codependent to leave a narcissist? Nobody around me gets this. So let's talk about this in turn. Let's remove the labels of codependent for a second here, because I think while these words can be really clarifying for some people, they can really trip up other people, and then they they get defensive and angry and they shut down. And so there's so many challenges with trying to communicate all of this stuff effectively. So when a person, okay, in any type of relationship or friendship, there's going to be bonds that are created. Like, that's normal. That's what people do. And it's not something that we do consciously. Like, these are bonds that are, it's just, we're pack animals, like, like, just like, or herd animals, or what would be the right term for, like, primates? I don't even know. We're animals that function in a group. And so in order for us to function in a group, like, biologically, we're designed to have this bonding with each other. So, like, my survival is dependent upon your survival and vice versa. It's like a very primitive kind of thing. So these bonds are established in order for us to be invested in each other, in order for us to all work together as a team and move forward and survive and thrive, right? Versus other animals that don't have that. Like, I don't know, like reptiles, like, it's just, or fish. It's just kind of like, yeah, I reproduced, and then, or they mate with the partner once and then it's done. And then it's just all about survival. It's not about working together as a team, like, down the road. So there's not like these intense bonds. And I could be way off on this. And if you're a biologist or a zoologist or what have you, please feel free to comment down below and set me straight. But this is just kind of my take on it. Okay. So human beings we have these deep bonds within each other. These bonds take time to break, and a lot of them are very chemical bonds. So you have a lot of kind of these feel good chemicals and hormones that are going through your body. So you have, like, dopamine and oxytocin, and these different types of hormones that bond us to each other. It's it's what's released in a mother's breast milk when she's feeding an infant. It's like, these are like connecting kinds of things. And so they're also released during sex. They're released oftentimes, like, when we hug another person, when we're around other people for a long enough time, this whole, like, mirroring behavior that we were talking about earlier, like, all of this kind of stuff leads to healthy bonding. Where it becomes problematic is when we've got a problematic person that we're bonding with. And so there's really in my opinion, like, two types of bonds. You have healthy bonds, and then you have trauma bonds. And so trauma bonds are when you've got these, it's the same process, same type of stuff that goes on between another person, but it's for unhealthy reasons. And so things get really kind of discombobulated. So a person's bonding with a person over dysfunction and versus over something that's healthy. So let me give you some examples. So trauma bonds, like we talked about earlier, so you have these highs and lows, these roller coaster type relationships where the good times are really good, the bad times are really bad. And they're the one that hurts you the most, but then all of a sudden they come back and it's all these professions of love, and or that they want to get back together with you, or that they call you or text you. And so, like, there was a lot of pain, and now there's not a lot of pain. Now you're feeling really good. Like, okay, this can be saved. I can make this work. They do care. And then the lows become really low. They're cheating, they're stealing, they're lying, they're manipulating. And then they give these promises of hope and change, right? And then the highs are really high, and, like, you're renewed and refreshed and restored. Then the lows are really low, and then they start the name calling and all of this stuff. And so it's this manipulation of these intense emotions that also bond people. This happens, interestingly enough, like, this happens not just in abusive relationships, but there's this same kind of chemical reaction that's happening when a person watches something scary. So let's say if you're on a first date with somebody. So you go and you watch a scary movie with them. Even though you're not actively participating in this like life-threatening event, right? Like you're watching a scary movie, like a slasher film. You're seeing all of them trying to survive. You're emotionally going through that as well. So you're still riding those, are they going to be okay? Oh my gosh, no, they're not okay. And then, oh my gosh, they were able to get away. And oh my gosh, no, they're not able to get away, right? So it's like all of these highs and lows. And so here's where it's interesting. So what happens is after that movie's over, there's this bond that's created between the people that experienced this movie, especially the person that, like, if you're on a date, because you're getting closer to them and you're going through the highs and lows of these people in this movie. It's bonding to you, and it creates this dynamic of, oh my God, we just went through this together. It's weird. But it's true. I mean, it's weird how that happens. But in an abusive relationship, it's that same feeling of we've gone through so much together. But really the difference is you haven't gone through so much together. You've been put through so much. And it's this comes from this whole concept of Stockholm syndrome, where you had these bank robbers in Stockholm, Sweden, that held I think it was 4 or so people hostage for several days. And what they found was at the end of it that these hostages were defending their captors and had bonded with them. Some of them had helped raise money for their legal defense afterwards. One gal even periodically had one of the guys over for dinner, like with her family, like decades later. And they began researching, like, why was this? And it was this feeling of they had gone through this traumatic event together instead of perceiving it as, I was put through this traumatic event by this person. Because there's a difference, a big, big difference, right? And so it's really important that we see that. So, going through something together, and Helene, you touched on this earlier. So going through something, this us versus, it's me and you, baby, against the world dynamic. This is very common in an abusive relationship, and that's why. So if you have, going through something with a person would be, we're talking like war, good economies, bad economies, right? Like termite infestations, your children sneaking out of the house late at night. I don't know, weight gain, weight loss, new hobbies, new hairstyles. Like you're going through life together. That's going through a lot. Sickness, health, right? Job loss, career changes, and you're aging. Like all of these things, that's going through a lot together. Being put through a lot is when it's a one-sided dynamic where you've got one person that's lying, cheating, stealing, siphoning funds, manipulating, abusing, they're hurting the other person. They're putting the other person through so much. And the other person feels, because the other person that's doing all this harm doesn't care. So the person on the receiving end is the one that's left to clean up all of this mess. And so they're like, I don't have, what other choice do I have? I've got to hang on. I mean, I signed up to be married, right? Like this is what commitment is going through the highs and lows of life together. But it's that mindset shift, because it's like, no, this is not the highs and lows of life together. These are the highs and lows of an abusive relationship. Totally different. Totally different. But if you're not aware of and sometimes the differences can be, to like an untrained eye, they can seem like the same. They don't seem like differences. And so people stay in these dynamics oftentimes for decades, not realizing that like this is even abnormal, let alone abusive. They think this is just the highs and lows. But it's not normal. It's not normal to lie and cheat and steal and siphon funds and manipulate and abuse and yell and scream and threaten and cuss and hit and all of that. Like any one of those things is not normal. So yeah, Truth Seeker says they're manufactured highs and lows. Okay, so let me go through some of these questions here. And we'll go from there. So, okay, this is from Mona. Mona says, okay, hi Dana. After more than, I think it's 15 years, either 1.5 years or 15 years, I'm not sure. I am still suffering from being discarded by my husband. I think it's 1.5 years. We are about to get divorced February 14th. Yeah, I know. After several big fights, he called me on the phone on one day in 2015 and broke up with me, telling me that he wanted a divorce. He called me a terrible person and blamed me for everything that went wrong in our relationship. I knew that our relationship was difficult at that time, but I was completely surprised by his decision and the cruelty of his words and actions. He didn't want to talk to me or see me, and he contacted me 3 months later to pick up his belongings from my apartment from where we had lived together for 3 years. The encounter was awful, as he was a totally different person. There was no feelings, no empathy, no regret. It was as if he had prepared himself to not talk about what happened or how he left me. When I told him how traumatizing these past months had been for me, he didn't feel sorry at all. He brushed off everything I said by telling me that this was not his mentality and that it was nobody's fault. It was just he wasn't ready to be married. We knew each other for 5 years. We were only married a couple of months, but I am simply shocked at how irresponsible and careless a grown person can be. 4 weeks prior to the breakup, he wrote me a love letter telling me that his love for me was unconditional. We haven't been in touch ever since, except for figuring out our divorce. I still haven't gotten over the trauma of that phone call, and I still can't believe I married somebody who was capable of hurting me this much. I know I will never get closure through him, since he is not acknowledging that he treated me this way. In his opinion, he was just protecting himself from me, this horrible person. So my question is, how do I get over the guilt of being blamed for destroying the relationship? And can you explain to me how he thinks he's the victim of this story? Thank you so much, Dana. So, okay, a couple things here. How do you get over the guilt? Well, we've talked about this before. There's really two main types of guilt. There's appropriate guilt and then there's inappropriate guilt. And appropriate guilt is when a person does something wrong and they feel bad about it. Inappropriate guilt is when a person feels guilt when they did nothing wrong, but yet they still feel bad. And so I would try to get clear is what you're really feeling guilt, because if you didn't do anything bad, then there's no reason to feel guilt. So he might be trying to make you feel guilty about this being, which is very, very common, because if you've got a person that's not accountable at all for their behavior and they're blaming you and they're like, you were abusive, you're manipulative, you were mean, awful, horrible, totally unfair and cruel. And you're like, what? Like, where is this even coming from? This is not you. Like, this is him. So there's no reason to feel guilty if you didn't do anything wrong. And of course, they'll try to this is what they do. Like, they spin things around. They make themselves the victim of the situation. And then they deny any wrongdoing in it. And a lot of this, so answer the second part of your question, how can he think he's the victim of the story? This is a great example of how people rationalize their behavior to themselves. Because when we talk about this often, so there's this concept, it's called cognitive dissonance. It's basically a fancy way of saying mental distress. And it's the mental distress that a person has, we all have it, when we have two conflicting thoughts about the same topic at the same time, especially as they pertain to the action that we're going to take. Because at any given time, a person's thought and their action has to line up all the time. Thoughts equal our actions. If we're not acting in a way where our thoughts equal our actions, we're acting in a way that doesn't make sense to us. And when a person does that, it causes mental distress. So in order to ease the friction that's felt, a person comes up with like all kinds of justifications for why they're doing what they're doing. So back to what we were talking about earlier. So let's say, for example, slavery, right? How does a person justify that kind of thing? How do you make other people into like the bad person when if a person's owning slaves, right? And like they're in their mind, like how do you justify that, right? They would have to pick a thought that matches that action. So if the action is, I think it's totally reasonable to be able to buy and sell other human beings, which is pretty like slam dunk, outrageous, ridiculous behavior, right? If that's the action that we're going to take, then we've got to back that up with a thought. So then the thought might be, yeah, I have no problem with buying and selling other human beings. In order to bridge the gap, but then the other conflicting thought might be, it might be a problem to buy and sell other human beings. Like, boy, they really seem to not be okay with that. Like they're crying, they're angry, like, if it's registering that it's a problem, right? Because it's just so, that to me is just such an obvious example of like really problematic behavior that a large part of probably every society has taken part in at some point. And so in order to bridge that gap, they have to back up they have to rationalize it to themselves. So they might say, well, you know what? It does say in this certain religious text here that, this was okay because of X, Y, and Z. And they justify it according to a religious text, or they justify it because it was what their ancestors did, or they justify it generally by making, whatever group of people is being enslaved at the time somehow less than human. And they justification to make it okay. It's the same thing in any type of abusive relationship or abusive dynamic. So if their action is going to be, I'm going to up and leave my spouse and I'm going to move on with my life and like not give them any closure, anything, I've got to find a thought that matches that. So if my thought is, I want to leave my spouse, but then my other thought is, boy, this would really be a dirtbag way to do it, to just like up and leave with a phone call and, whatever. I've got to be able to pick the thought to get out of that cognitive dissonance. I've got to pick the thought that's in alignment with my action. And so I've got to justify that mental leap that I have to do to somehow convince myself that it's totally okay to just pick up and leave and walk out on this person. One of the most common ways to do that is then to make the other person the enemy. And it's the whole like, well, look at what you made me do, right? Like I had no choice but to up and leave you because you were so awful and cruel. Even though it might not be true, but in their mind, they're going to start picking out like any type of justification whatsoever to back up their action so they can stay out of that cognitive dissonance. Keep in mind, much of this is subconscious. Like, yes, they know what they're doing to some extent, but a lot of this, like the justifications and stuff, this is all like deeper subconscious stuff. So in their mind, they're feeling because they're going back stuff from, from the day you met, and he's picking out stuff as to all the reasons as to why you were the problem, especially if there's no accountability there on his side. So Salon asks, Dana, can abuse or trauma cause an illness like psychosis or schizophrenia? Yes. Yes. So they don't know what causes schizophrenia. It's thought that there's a fairly strong genetic component there, but there's also mental illness is a really it's a fairly new field, generally speaking, and there's a lot of different factors at play, and the human brain is so complex, and it's such a fascinating organ and mechanism, and how it copes with things. and how it processes information and all of that. So with schizophrenia, psychosis as well. I mean, stress is often a huge, huge trigger. People oftentimes have different, psychotic breaks. It might be during they could be, an attorney or a doctor and have a ton of pressure and then just have a complete psychotic break. They could have a history of mental illness and be fairly stabilized and then have I don't know, like a significant death in their life, or they could have had a significant death 10 years ago and that they're still grieving that loss. And so maybe like every Christmas or every, I don't know, certain day of the year is incredibly stressful and triggering for them. And so there's kind of this like window of their behavior it's really, really intense around that time. And so there's just lots of different factors at play, and different people respond to different treatments differently. So, okay. And it's interesting too, if you read different books about trauma, The Body Keeps the Score is one, and I'm trying to think of a few other ones that I've read. Where, the two most recommended therapies that I've come across for trauma have been EMDR and EFT. And both of those, so like EFT has more to do with tapping, and it's almost, I would say it's along the lines of like acupuncture, where it's this idea that there's energy meridians in the body and that emotions are like a kind of energy in motion, and they get trapped in certain like meridians. And once these meridians can be opened up, then the energy flow is restored. I don't know. All I know is that a lot of people have had a lot of success with EFT, and within like 2 or 3 treatments for major trauma. So it kind of makes me think, I don't know if it's psychosomatic, kind of like mind over matter, or if there really is some real science that backs it up. But frankly, it doesn't matter. Like if it works, right? And the EMDR, it's eye movement, EMDR, what is it? Eye movement, I want to say desensitization and reprocessing, but I'm not sure if that's right. And so anyways, it's this concept that you focus on this point and then you're focusing on this event or this feeling. And when your brain's focusing on multiple things at multiple times, it's sort of like trauma happens like a flash on a camera. So it's just this moment, it's like an old Polaroid camera, like that, and it's just flashed, and it's in the brain. And so the brain has a hard time letting go because it's just this bomb went off in the brain. And it doesn't have to be like major trauma. It could be anything significant. I mean, it could be getting in a car accident. It could be falling down the stairs. It could be, witnessing abuse as a child, which, that not to make light of that, because that is significant trauma. Like witnessing trauma is traumatic. These kinds of events can really take an emotional toll on a person. And so what it is, this EMDR is, it's like the brain is this event is just sitting there kind of at the forefront of the brain, and it's not able to be like chewed up and digested and like swallowed. And so it's thought with EMDR that it helps the brain to take this event and then to move, like to be able to process it and kind of like swallow it and start digesting it to where it can actually effectively process it. And again, lots of people report a lot of really positive results after like minimal visits. So, and interesting stuff. Um, so, okay, this is from Jill. Jill says, "Hello, Dana. I've been watching your YouTube channel for a few months now. It's been almost a year since my longtime spouse and father of my children left. And after he left was when people started telling me that he had narcissistic personality disorder traits. And watching you and reading a little bit on the subject, I've noticed that yes, the things he did were very similar to the things that you speak about. However, this is the father of my children, and labeling him as narcissistic personality disorder kind of makes it seem like he's a lost cause. For the sake of my children, I hope that this is not true. So my main question is, how can you tell if it's genuine narcissistic personality disorder or if he just has some deep-rooted childhood issues that can be resolved with counseling? Can narcissistic personality disorder be fixed? Is there any hope of him maintaining a normal, healthy life? One of his main issues is that he has never been able to be happy for himself. I always had to prop him up, and when I didn't do that in the way that I thought I should anymore, he found someone else to prop him up, to tell him that he was worthy, to tell him that he was wonderful. Someone that devoted every second of every day to making him feel like he was special. If I could ask for one thing for him, it would be for him to learn how to know that he's a good person and to feel happy without someone else doing that for him. I feel as though I always had to validate his feelings, and he cannot stand on his own and be a happy person. He always wants someone to make it better or someone to make him happy. Will he ever be able to make himself happy?" So lots of great questions in here. Let's go through them one at a time. So as far as the term goes, you know, I'm a big fan of like putting labels aside. Labels change. Okay, so first of all, it's the behavior. It's the behavior, it's not the label. So to me, that's splitting hairs and can really be kind of a moot point. The label is important. I think it can be a pointer to the behaviors and be like, these are the behaviors that are problematic. It's kind of like a rose by any other name still smells as sweet, right? Problematic behavior by any other name is still very problematic. So whatever you want to call it, it's still the same kind of behavior and it's still incredibly problematic. So you can use whatever terminology that you want to use. Because this is your situation, you can define it in any way that you're comfortable with. So, whether or not, he can be fixed or that these deep rooted, most personality disorders, most of them come from deep-rooted childhood issues. So that's very, very common. The difference is, let me back up a little bit. So when the term personality disorder, it's, in a way, there's almost no such thing because there's just personalities, right? There's just different types of personalities. Where the term disorder comes in is that when personality is viewed as like, these are the traits that are needed in order to work together in a group, in order to have an amicable personality enough to be able to get along well with others, basically. If a person doesn't have that kind of personality, where they have like major behavior characteristics that like negatively impacts other people on a consistent basis, right? And it's not due to culture, it's not due to like drug use or alcoholism, like this is kind of who they are in this context. Pretty like consistently problematic behavior, then that's more of like what's labeled a personality disorder. But it's based, so I think of it this way. Like personality disorder is basically a persistent problematic personality traits within a person. Blah. say that 3 times fast. So it's problematically, like persistent problematic behavior. Okay. And it comes from a wide variety of things. Most likely it's caused by it's kind of the whole saying, like, hurt people tend to hurt people. So it's this unprocessed childhood trauma. This is what it's mainly thought to come from. But it doesn't have to be like significant trauma. Again, like this is where this kind of like wild card comes from. So people oftentimes think of like, oh, this person really needs to go through an awful lot in order to develop a personality disorder. And it's like, oh, not really. It's like their parents could be divorced, and like that can cause some of it. Like they could have, it's how people perceive the events really that are going on around them and how they internalize that. So there's it's not just like necessarily nature or nurture or one or the other. I think it's oftentimes a combination of both. So, can it be fixed? Like it depends on who you ask. I think most people will say no, but the reason they say no isn't because it's not like stage 4 brain cancer, right? It's the problem with like any type of like personality disorder that's involved in narcissism, which I think a lot of like the cluster B kind of stuff does, like true cluster B stuff, like antisocial, histrionic, narcissistic, borderline. But I think, again, like my 2 cents is I think a lot of borderline stuff is trauma. It's not like true borderline. I think more like true borderline stuff it's more narcissism at the core and not trauma. Which again, like, I don't know that, but anyways, long story short, even if there is a cure for something, a person has to want to utilize that cure. Just like there's a cure for alcoholism, right? Like there's a cure for anorexia. There's a cure for diabetes, or I shouldn't say a cure for diabetes, but there's treatment, right? Like there's things that people can do for these different health and medical challenges that they have. But if a person's not motivated, highly motivated to utilize the treatments out there, then they're not going to get better. And unfortunately, most of us, I think pretty much all people, are generally only motivated really by pain. Like sometimes things have to get bad enough in order for us to want to do something different. Because human beings, we're wired for consistency. It's this whole homeostasis. Like this is the baseline. Like this is what's comfortable. This is what we know. This is why people stay in abusive relationships or abusive or like toxic work environments, or they stay in the same town that they were born in, even though they hate it there. It's like there's comfort with consistency. And so in order to get out of our comfort zone, we oftentimes have to experience a lot of pain. If a person's behavior doesn't cause them pain, especially if they're blaming everybody else for their actions, but not only that, but if they're getting the opposite, right? If they're not able to hit rock bottom. So if I'm walking around, so he's never feeling happy by himself, but he's able to go from partner to partner who worships the ground he walks on and continues to fill that bucket for him. Oh, you're so fantastic and charming and handsome and funny, and there's no pain in that. If anything, it's the exact opposite. So he's getting those emotional needs met big time. So there's no desire, there's no motivation for him to have that awareness of, hey, maybe there's something wrong here, which is really, frankly, it's really unfortunate because he's missing out on a lot, and that's a very hard way to live when you're always looking towards somebody else to make you okay with yourself. So, will he ever be able to make himself happy? Probably not. My guess would be until he experiences enough pain, he will continue to go from partner to partner, and completely draining them emotionally and demanding and expecting that they give and they give and they give and they give, while he continues to take and take and take. And then once that person has nothing left to give, then he'll move on and then blame that person for not meeting his needs. So, hope that answered your question. Here's one from Ever Grateful. She says, what of the narcissist that doesn't love bomb, who doesn't chase women, who waits for the woman to come to him and do all the chasing? My guess is that he's the passive aggressive kind of narcissist. What's your opinion? Thank you in advance. So not all narcissistic people love bomb. Like lots of them do, because that tends to be the most effective, right? Sort of like if you want to attract, what's the saying? You attract more flies with honey than you do vinegar. So generally, like if you're trying to manipulate somebody, it works a lot better if you're telling them everything that they want to hear. So, but sometimes you do get the manipulative person or the abusive person that maybe they don't feel that they need to do that. So maybe that person is incredibly good looking and women do flock to him. So he doesn't have to do anything other than just give them crumbs. Or maybe they're not good looking. Maybe he's got money. Maybe he's good looking. Maybe he has I don't know, a fancy car, whatever. He's got something that women really want. So if he's not giving them like affection and attention, then there's something. Sometimes though, you've got an abusive person or a manipulative person who doesn't even have any of those things. It's just they literally just give the bare minimum. But again, if a person is starved out, if they're incredibly lonely, if they have really low self-esteem, if they have some sort of like emotional empty bucket in their own life where they're just so starved out that any type of even promise of crumbs from somebody, they're going to feast on that and they're going to cling to that. So, and of course, if you've got a guy who, maybe if he's getting a woman to kind of chase him, I mean, I don't know what he's telling. I don't know how he's getting them to necessarily chase him, if he's kind of laying it on thick and then he's pulling it away, or if he's just continually just seeming distant, or if they're just like that starved out, or kind of what the dynamic is. But yeah, not all of them love bomb. Some of them are, again, like you have two types of manipulative people in this world. Like you have the wolves in wolves' clothing, and then you have the wolves in sheep's clothing. So, the cycle, the traditional cycle of narcissistic abuse, the idealized, devalue, discard, sometimes that idealized cycle is not there. It's more like crumbs, like devalue, grind down, and then either discard or it's just crumbs and then grind down. And they don't, which is like the word to me, like that's, I don't know, they're all incredibly bad, but then they're not, the person who's stuck in that, if they're continuing to get crumbs and then just ground down like that, and I'm sure there's a lot of like psychological and emotional and verbal abuse that's going on as well to make them feel like you should be happy with crumbs and what's wrong with you and it's your fault. Look at how much I do for you. It's never enough for you. You're the problem. You're manipulative. You're abusive. You're too emotional. You can't take a joke, blah, 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 blah. And the person that's stuck in that is really thinking, oh my gosh, it really is me. I just somehow need to be okay. I need to learn how to survive on crumbs. And that's, when I hear about these types of dynamics and I get emails about these kinds of things every now and again, and my heart breaks for these people that are in these types of situations, because these are the ones that I think can be the most like deadly, that can really push a person to suicide, because it's such a grinding down of another person. It's and there's so much blame, and it really is like they're being erased. They're being starved out and they're being erased. And that is, and they don't even realize it. It's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. If you're ever in a dynamic where you have to sacrifice your dignity or your respect to stay in it, it's time for you to go. Please understand this. Like, there is no making that work. There is no making that work. That's not okay to ever, ever, ever be treated like that. And it's not your issue. You can't make somebody treat you with a lack of dignity and a lack of respect. Like, that's in them. People, again, this goes back to like, our thoughts always equal our actions. Our morals and values guide our behavior. No matter how far a person is pushed, they're not going to act in a way, unless, well, unless it's really, really extreme. They're generally not going to act in a way that's out of alignment with their sense of identity, or in a way that they think that it's not okay. And it really takes like extreme circumstances to make a person like really do extreme things. So no, there's nothing that you can do. It's never, abuse is never justifiable. It's never okay. It's never okay to take power and control over another human being like that. It's just, it's not. So please know that. Okay, this is from Lucy, who asks, she was married for 9 years. They have 2 children. He's never cheated, and we have been separated for 9 months. He has not moved on. He's accused me of flirting and was jealous on a few occasions in our relationship. He has also sworn at me and speaks to me badly and criticizes my parenting skills. Yet sometimes he praises me and supports me and can be so kind. He is not lazy and has been good with the kids. I am so confused because I don't flirt, and I married him because I loved him. I'm worried I may have given him mixed messages which caused him insecurities. His behavior has been inconsistent, and he left me feeling whether I am the one that caused it. I still love him and miss him despite all of the accusations. Why? So, why do you miss him? Well, you have 2 children with him and you were married for 9 years. And abusive people generally are not 100% rotten. Like, there's oftentimes, like you said, in many ways, he's a really great dad. I'm sure that there were, he's not lazy. He can be so kind at times. He did help to support you. He does sometimes praise you. So there are some good things about him. But again, like, the good times are really good, but the bad times are really bad. And that's very confusing for a lot of people when they go through that, because, that's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of stuff. And, that's not normal to have Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of stuff. So, his inconsistent behavior oftentimes will, and when you're dealing with an abusive person or an emotional manipulator, their behavior is inconsistent. And because it's inconsistent, it'll leave you feeling inconsistent and like knocked off balance, because you don't know what you're walking into. So, but you still bonded with the good side of him. And those bonds aren't easily broken. It takes time for them to break and for you to heal and for you to move on. So I guess just try to be kind with yourself and just realize this is just part of it. And as far as his behavior and you're worrying that you somehow gave him the wrong idea, there's a couple things you can do here. I would say starting asking yourself, do you think you were flirting? It sounds like you don't. Then, okay. Then ask yourself, would somebody else whose opinion that you value, right? Would they think, if they were a fly on the wall, would they think that you were flirting? And if the answer is no, then ask yourself, okay, if he was acting in the way that you were acting, would you think he was flirting? And if the answer is no, then odds are it's not you, it's him. So what you're describing here, there's a couple things. He could have any number of things going on, but that kind of stuff, when a person starts accusing other people of doing stuff that they're not doing, and especially with abusive people, it's generally a form of projection. So my guess would be that he's the one that's been flirting and that he's not comfortable with that at a deeper subconscious level, and he's putting that on you. So that's why he's accusing you of flirting, because really he was the one that was flirting. So, and is very common. This is something people do this. Like, people project all the time. Whenever we have thoughts that are not comfortable with us, with our brain, we get rid of them. Brain's a weird thing. And a lot of times people are not even aware that they're projecting, which is so wild when you're like, it's so obvious, like you're getting accused of, like, especially if you know that they did that. Like, if you know, you're like, this person totally stole money from me, or like cheated, and now they're accusing me of stealing money from them, or like me cheating on them. And it's crazy making, because it's like, how do they not see the hypocrisy in this? Like, how do they not see that, like, they're the ones that did this? Or they might be incredibly abusive and then be like 10 seconds later accuse you of being abusive. Like, it's that kind of stuff. Or they're like, you're like, wait a minute, I'm feeling that they're being highly manipulative, but then they're accusing you of being highly manipulative. Like, these are all different ways of very common forms of projection. So that would be my 2 cents as to what was going on here. So I hope that answers your question. And let's see. Okay, here's another one from Ollie, who says, okay, one of the books I first read was by Melanie Beattie, The New Codependency, and Robin Norwood, Women Who Love Too Much. After finding myself in a marriage, I just couldn't seem to leave, despite the horrid, covert abuse going in. The book led me to the word narcissistic, which then took me on a journey, and I found Sam Vaknin, Richard, and then you. I think I'm a fawn freeze type, sickly sweet people pleaser. Arg. Once I figured out the dynamic of what I was in, I approached my husband about it, and life was never the same again. Horrific. To be honest, the downward spiral got faster. Also, my relationship with my family changed as I recognized the patterns in front of me. It felt like he knew all along how he was being, and he just upped his game and told me I was crazy and spun me even more, like he almost enjoyed it. My mother is definitely a fight-flight, and my sister is the same. I hardly see them, and they are very close, and I hardly exist. I never get invited out with them, and I'm never involved in family things. I'm accused of being an attention seeker and troublemaker. I genuinely feel I am the one who always wants to try to sort things out, who experiences emotions, and they are just so hard and tough and emotionally unavailable. Richard mentions how narcissistic parents split off good and bad parts. I think I have all of my mom's bad parts, and my sister got all of her good parts, and I feel like I am the bad one and in the wrong, but seem to be the only one capable of experiencing true emotion, logic, and rationality. I'm so confused. I'm always punished for voicing my opinion and feelings. My whole life feels like a lie, and I'm out here on my own. Half of me wishes I'd never started on this journey and bought that first book, and half of me is relieved. The realization of everything makes me feel constantly nauseous. How can I know for sure it's not me, or if it is? I certainly know that I have a bunch of issues, so whatever I sense about them does say a lot about me. I'm currently reading Pete Walker's book, From Surviving to Thriving, along with the Tao of Fully Feeling. So, okay, lots of great questions in here. So let me back up. The first part, with confronting an abusive person about abusive behavior, they already have that fight defense, right? So they're already in attack mode. That's what abuse is, right? So it's that constant grinding down of another person. It's that constant establishing power and control over another person through a wide variety of ways. And so when a person especially their target, challenges them and says, hey, I'm not okay with this. Like, I'm not okay with being treated like this, or this is what you're doing, this is abusive. They don't take that well. And everything that you're describing is very, very common. Calling an abuser out and saying what you're doing is abusive, it often accelerates abuse. And a lot of it's coming from this place of they feel entitled and justified to behave however they behave because they've made their target into the bad guy. So in their mind, they're justified in treating other people however they feel fit to treat other people. So if you were like, hey, this is not okay with me, his behavior got worse, that's very, very common. I'm sure he felt incredibly justified in his mistreatment of you. That's what they do. And this also, I think, so how can you tell if it's you or if it's him? By how he handled it. So when most people bring up an issue with another person and they say, hey, you know what? This is really problematic for me. Like, this really hurt my feelings, or like, this is just not okay with me, or this doesn't sit right. Most people have a team approach to things. It's a win-win type dynamic. It's like, oh, really? Oh my gosh. Like, let's sit down, let's discuss it, let's talk about it. Let's have that, open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's get this resolved. People that are more in the narcissistic side of the spectrum, they don't have that. It's a win-lose dynamic. And so there's no accountability there because they have to win. Like, they're not looking to seek a solution. They're not looking to work as a team. They're looking to gain and keep power and control over their target. So whatever you say is wrong if they don't agree. Whatever you do is, if it doesn't fit their idea of how you should act, like think, feel, or act, then you're wrong. And so there's not that team approach. So right there, you can tell by how another person handles any concerns that you have with them. Because if there's no team approach taken, then there's no relationship present, really, bottom line. So, if you can only stay in a relationship if you never bring up anything, then that's not a relationship. That's one person, doing whatever the hell they want, and it's another person walking on eggshells around giant elephants in a room. And that does not, eggshells and elephants do not a relationship make. So it's not you. As far as what you were saying about narcissistic parents splitting off good and bad parts. Okay, I think I think you misunderstood this. And I'm not sure exactly how Richard phrased it, but narcissistic people, abusive people in general, compartmentalize things. They have to in order to be able to justify their behavior, because our thoughts always have to match our actions. So if we think that we are inherently, most people tend to think that they're inherently a good person, even if their actions are bad or damaging. And in order to bridge that gap, they do a wide variety of things, but they have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to jump that gap. And so part of it is projection, part of it is denial, part of it is minimization, and all kinds of rationalizations in order to get their behavior to fit their identity, basically, is what it is. And so it's not that you somehow wound up with all of your mom's bad parts, right? Like, you didn't wind up with all of her junk DNA and your sister got all of the good stuff. I don't even think that's genetically possible for starters, okay? And second, it sounds like you've probably been treated like that your whole life, as if you were the problem because you didn't fit into kind of this dynamic of dysfunction. And this is also very, very common. So when you have a narcissistic parent, they tend to have, there's one child that's the golden child, the other child that's the scapegoat. And so for the golden child can do no wrong, whereas a scapegoat can do no right. And oftentimes the scapegoat is like the normal one. Like you were saying, you're like, I'm the one, I feel like I, am like logical and reasonable and have emotions, whereas these other people don't, and they're highly problematic, but I am being treated like I'm the crazy one. What you're describing is very much the dynamics of like when you've got a narcissistic parent. And it's really hard for people to sort out. And it often takes a long time. They're like, is it me? Is it them? Is it her? Is it like, what is going on here? And that's why. So I would encourage you to read as much as you can about narcissistic mothers and the dynamics that they have with their daughters. I think that'll give you a lot of clarity and validation. There's a handful of support groups out there that are specifically for narcissistic mothers, like daughters of narcissistic mothers. So I would start there. I can see what you were saying about, I wanted to touch on this because I'm really glad that you mentioned this in this letter. The dynamic of, or the feeling of like kind of this blessing and a curse that you came across these books and these concepts. And it is a challenge because it's sort of like once you see it, you can't, it really, I mean, you really got to do some mental gymnastics to not see it. And it's incredibly painful when it's like you said, incredibly painful, but incredibly validating. And when you start realizing, yes, like this makes sense, like so much of my life now makes sense. But it's incredibly painful because it's like, so much of my life now makes sense. And it really is a problem. So I get it. And you're so not alone in this. And I hope you do find some of these groups out there that are on the internet. And I think that'll really help to point you in some of the directions of like the next steps with moving forward and healing. Okay. See, some of these questions are long, and I might have to save them for next time. These are so. Let's see. We'll save this one for next time. Okay, and I'm gonna save these. Let me make a note to myself. I need to get organized with this. The struggle is real. Just making a note to myself. So the last kind of really quick question here was from Greg, who had said, he's like, I've been following your site for a few months now, and this includes your YouTube videos and other info. Your work has been hugely instrumental in my understanding of things. And I've now created a blog which describes what I'm trying to accomplish. Basically, I'm working on an autobiographical novel and a play, which is going to basically tell my story as it is unfolding. The latest news is that her attorney is pushing for a 4-day trial to complete our divorce. Can you please let me know if there's a possibility of any type of collaboration? Thank you so much. So I'm glad he brought this up because I've been wanting, my whole goal has been to try to get more organized to where I can do more kind of collaboration with stuff, because I think a lot of the healing comes from people hearing a wide variety of experiences from a wide variety of people and in a wide variety of dynamics. So, female to male, male to female, male to male, female to female, like mother to daughter, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, I'm all about people telling their story. I'm all about helping to promote other people's blogs and YouTube channels and all of that. So right now my struggle has been trying to organize my email. But I am getting better at this. So Greg, I have your contact info, but for anybody else out there, you can email me, deardana at thriveafterabuse.com with a question for the show, or for if you have a related site. I'd be more than happy. I think I have like a resources tab on my website. I have some sort of site up there that I have a list of like other sites that people can go to just get information and hear experiences. One just idea for you though with your situation, since you are doing something that's autobiographical as it's unfolding, I would talk to your attorney about this and any potential legal issues that may spin off from that. Because I've also thought about wanting to write my own story, and I'm very vocal with my YouTube channel and my experiences, and I do use the first name of the two men that I was involved with. I don't give out any other additional information than that, but I would just double check. Like, I would double check with an attorney. Knowing what I know now, I would do things differently, but I didn't really think anybody would watch my YouTube videos. I didn't think it mattered. I thought, this is the truth of my story, and I still stand behind that. And if something legal action were to be taken, I mean, I would handle it. So it is what it's done. Like, it's done now. So it is what it is. If there's any consequences from that, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. So, but just talk to an attorney about that, with how many potential details that you might need to change. And just kind of FYI for people out there, when I do get emails like the questions for the show, I always make sure to, if a person's giving specifics about their situation, I do change their name. And I oftentimes will kind of neutralize different details to where just in case, even if they're like, oh, I'm totally fine giving this out, just in case it could possibly come back to bite them, I do oftentimes try to make sure that it's like general enough that nobody could come back and be like, hey, he or she's talking about me, and then come after them. So just a lot of stuff like that to consider. But yeah, totally open to, spreading the word about this, and I think it's great. So, Mark says, if I send you a document, are you the only person that will read it? Yes, as of this time of making this video, I am the only person that reads my email, and that'll probably be the case at least for a little while down the road. And that's actually been one of the challenges that I've had, is I've been thinking about getting or trying to find some sort of like virtual assistant to help me with email and getting back to people and all of that. So, but I don't, my concern is the privacy and the safety and the security, and people, it's hard because people, they're emailing me. My email right now, I think, has an autoresponder set up because I get so many emails, I can't respond to all of them. I don't have a good system in place, and I want people to be able to get the resources of like the support group links and like the basic info, at least if they email me. But I'd like to be able to get to where there's a much better process in place for like following up. So, but it's hard to do because it's confident. People like that. They might not email me if they knew I had a virtual assistant, or if I had a like in-person assistant that was helping with my email and all of that. So, yeah, there's quite a few. Namal says, I think you should start a trust building and vetting process for someone so the person will be trustable 1 year or so down the road. But yeah, Mark, you can go ahead and send me something now. And but just in case anybody's watching this video like 6 months from now, I don't know. If I do change, just kind of FYI, if I do change something where there's going to be another person like helping me sort through email, I will put something in my YouTube description or on my website or on the probably all of the above, and on the contact page, so people are aware of that. But right now, because a lot of other people, they'll hire people to like respond to their social media and do that kind of stuff. I don't. Like, it's 100% me. So Instagram, Facebook, I have a team. There's like a team of volunteers that help me do a lot of what I'm doing. And there's a few people that I pay as well, that do more of like a lot of the technical stuff, like splitting up the videos and that kind of stuff that is very time intensive. But as far as like responding and stuff, that's something that I take very, very seriously. So, um, what was I was gonna say? There was a question I was gonna answer real quick. Oh shoot. Um, oh, I was gonna talk about the book club. Yes, thank you. So, Careless Whispers just said, she's like, I just finished Shahida's book, and that's the book that we're reading for the book club, which I totally dropped the ball with this month, and I am so incredibly sorry. But I like gonna just keep moving forward and keep trying to just get organized and get a system in place with all of this stuff. So Lucy and I talked about book club stuff. I will do a video. It's getting to be kind of late. I'll do a video tomorrow. Let's do that, about the book club and what we were thinking. But yeah, we're kind of thinking of changing it up quite a bit, and I'll be curious to see kind of how this goes and what you guys have to say about it. So anybody that has read the book for book club, keep your eyes open for a video from me tomorrow about that, and we'll go from there. Okay. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for your feedback and support of each other, and for your amazing questions. And I hope that my 2 cents is helps to give you some of the validation and the clarity that you're looking for. And just please know that you guys matter. Like, you matter, and you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. It's not a lot to ask. It really isn't. So with that said, you guys have a fantastic evening, and just lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I'll see you on the video tomorrow. Okay, bye.